Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. Every world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Boom! Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, coming at you live from my studio/RV dining room, located directly inside America. Welcome back, folks of the interwebs. Once again, JJ Vance here, host of Operation GCD, but perhaps more notably, not the vice president. I will be your pilot and navigator here tonight, folks, for this shenanigan-infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. Got a real barn burner on deck for you folks of the interwebs here tonight. So appreciate you folks. Thanks for joining us here again to get a little GCD, because we got an occult and esoteric review of the 1985 cinematic masterpiece, Back to the Future, with an entire Occult Rejects lineup, including Nick, host of the Occult Rejects. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Welcome, sir. I would have been really upset if you didn't consider this one a barn burner. I swear to God, I even had that in my head. If he does not use barn burner for this, I'm going to say something.
No, this is definitely a barn burner. Yeah. And we got a whole Occult Rejects lineup. So I appreciate y'all joining me here to get a little GCD. We got Jen. Oh, that's not Jen the Ninja. Wrong one. Jen the Ninja. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much, JJ and Nick, for having me on. And I absolutely love doing these episodes. I know people on Twitter are always so excited when it's like a group of us. I think it's like for me, I know I won't give your secret away, Nick, but I know on the Carlwood episode, we used a different hermetic number, or I should say but someone did. But 5 for me is a perfect hermetic number. So I appreciate that we can do these kind of roundtable esoteric reviews. And I think they're really hot and people love them. So thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, for sure. Host of the Threshold Saints and a fellow Occult Reject there. And I definitely appreciate your all's insight on the last one we did. Well, we've done a couple good ones recently, right? We did a little Big Trouble Little China, and we also did a little Golden Child. So those were great ones. I certainly enjoyed those myself. And next up, we got Heidi Love, host of the Unfiltered Rise podcast and fellow Occult Reject. How you doing, Heidi? Welcome.
I'm
Thanks for joining me
happy
to
to
get a
be
little
here.
GCD here. Your first
Oh,
appearance,
yeah.
by the way,
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and
on
be
Operation
on and
GCD, that is.
right, because we've done Fridays. This is a different one, and we're just always
And
together, and I think it's so fun.
countless other Occult Reject shows, right? So
Oh,
if
yeah.
you could introduce the Unfiltered Rise podcast to the Operation GCD audience that perhaps is not familiar with your work.
Absolutely. So I'm Heidi Love of the Unfiltered Rise. I'm also an ex-Mormon, just like JJ, and I talk a lot about that on my show, but I also do kind of a whole multitude of different things. Anything that strikes my fancy, especially like Mormon mafia, weird stuff like that. It's a garbage can too.
And some great parapolitics stuff, especially relative to the from JFK to Whitewater, et cetera. And I think, I have a general noted theory that everything kind of goes back through that Whitewater threading to JFK. So what we're dealing with today, that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for being here. I love everyone here, all the rejects and boss. Thank you.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, thank you, boss.
Last but not least, in no particular order, Cosmic Peach, Julia, welcome to Operation GCD. Your first appearance as well. Much like Heidi, we've done some Fridays and plenty of Occult Reject shows, but thanks for joining me to get a little GCD there, Julia. Looking forward to it.
We did the Golden Child together, right?
Holy smokes, you were on the gold. See, now here we go. I was just telling Heidi yesterday about that Ed Cassis show we were doing on Occult Rejects. I thought she was there, so I keep replacing who was in these shows. So I do apologize.
So everybody
That's
here can
all
probably
right.
even attest how many times I'll text and be like, "Hey, did I ask you for this show?"
It's so funny.
Seriously though, I mean, not just 1 second there, Julia. Yesterday, I was in a podcast with doing some Mormon parapolitics and Society of Cincinnati conversations on the Sixth Century podcast with Heidi. There was a fellow guest, and I kept referencing in the show that show we did with Ed Cassis. And she finally says, "I wasn't there." I was like, "Oh shoot, you weren't there."
But my favorite thing,
She was there.
this is my favorite thing he said. In my brain, you were there. You should have been there. And I'm like, I was off of work. I just didn't know.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Oh shoot.
That
Well, I
was
apologize,
funny.
Julia.
No, it's all good in the hood. I'm just happy to be here. I'm excited for this movie. I got a lot of cool notes and what the fuck's up, everybody? I'm excited.
Oh yeah, I was looking forward to this.
What's going on the Cosmic Peach podcast as of late? What's the focus?
I'm actually
the subjects you've been interested in as of late.
I'm working on I don't know if I'm going to do 3 or 4 parts because I always try to do 4 parts, but this one might be 3 parts. But I'm working on a new series about sleep paralysis and demonic and paranormal experiences. So that's a new focus right now, and that series should be dropping next month. So I'm actually really excited about that.
Yeah,
That sounds exciting.
so good for you.
Well, again, I appreciate y'all joining me. I got one plug real fast before we get started, and that's my upcoming Sunday show, 8 p.m. on Sundays. Operation GCD Live Sundays, and the first episode this Sunday, The Curse of Robert the Doll. So this is my Patreon, my new Patreon series here on Sunday. So that'll be in the show notes along with all your all's links as well.
Yo, what the hell is
Are
he
you
wearing?
scared though? Are you scared to start that crap up over there?
I don't like looking at a photo of Robert. That's why I Muppetized him in the first place, even though I've been on a real Muppet trend as of late. But yeah, I don't. I sleep well at night, but thinking about this damn thing and the curse, I don't know if I sleep that great the last couple nights. But maybe
Have you
I
had
looked at it as
sleep
more
paralysis?
I was about to say, speaking of sleep paralysis, Robert might be haunting me in that too. No, I'm trying to approach it as more of a cathartic experience. I know Julia had invited me onto her show to discuss the matter. I'm like, all right, well, let me get all my thoughts on it first. Let me put it down in order, then I'll be happy to join you there, Julia, after this Sunday's The Curse of the Robert Doll Operation GCD.
Sounds good.
So, but tonight we're talking about the 1985 cinematic masterpiece, Back to the Future. And I believe this really started through a conversation. I mean, we've been doing these occult and esoteric reviews here. I'm a big fan of film and just telling stories and the way stories are told in the first place. And, and kind of, these, I love the ideas of time. So this movie's always been a big interest of mine. But this really started off with a conversation Nick and I had. I think we were doing some disc golfing, and he was making a reference to how often or the use of the term spooky that I was I often call the the intelligence agencies or lack of intelligence agencies. I call them spooky, spooky operations, etc. And Nick thought I was at first when he heard me saying that, he was telling me that he thought I was making some sort of derogatory racial reference of some regard, right? So,
It's like, how come when I was a kid and I heard my whatever grown-ups say that, it was
no, that was common nomenclature there a few decades ago for for some but I suppose about the same as the N-word, right? So as soon as he said that to me, I thought of the film Back to the Future. So I was like, oh well, just like Back to the Future, right? So that's kind of where he and I first started talking about this occult and esoteric review of the film. But I'd like to hear where y'all were first interested in this. Starting off, Nick, where did was this a film you were always a big fan of since you were a child, or did you see this in the theaters?
Huge. I don't think I saw it in the theaters, but no, I mean, it was definitely a movie that I had like on a VHS tape that I watched multiple times.
Nice. You watched it out.
It was a classic for me. Yeah. That and the second one, I did enjoy. The second one was a little because of the train, but I did. It was huge. I mean, I feel like maybe what was that, 85? So I was 7. I mean, around that time, I think it's kind of silly how I felt like at that time you were kind of seeing the world spring, I think, forward in a sense too. Like, it's hard to explain, but around that time, I even feel like with music and just what was going on in the world, it was changing as well. So I guess like that was like, oh, this is what's to come in the future. I don't know. Just seemed very nostalgic,
right
at the time, even watching it then. But yeah, that's all I got. I think JJ froze.
I cut out.
Yeah.
No, there was a very sci-fi futuristic aspect to this. I remember as a child thinking, like, especially with the second one, I'm gonna need me one of those hoverboards. You know what I mean? Like, there's those things will be around in the future, right? You know what I mean? It's kind of funny because 2015 is much like I don't think we've really gotten that more technologically advanced outside of some cell phone, right? Technologies, right? Some digital stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, well, it's not like we thought. Yeah.
No, I think this was the first film that I ever saw at the theater. I know I saw the second one at the theater, and like you were saying, I wore the VHS out on this one for sure. I'm pretty sure this was the first film I saw at the theater, but I would have been almost 6. So Jen, when did you first find out you were a big fan of Back to the Future? Is this something you've been a big fan of as your whole life as a child, or what are you talking about here?
So I'm a 90s kid, obviously, and I obviously watched it in the 90s, and I think I liked it. Like, it's, to me, I wasn't sure. Like, when you were like, do you want to do this? Of course I want to do our movie reviews. It's like the most fun thing we do pretty much every month. So, of course I want to do it, but I didn't know how much I could add to it through this film, simply because of my unfamiliarity with it. But then Nick, being the great boss that he is, sent me his great notes, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. And then I was like, yeah, this actually totally makes sense. This is like, I can follow his Kabbalistic logic from like beginning to end. And I was like, yeah, these are the same things that I thought were really interesting. So, I mean, I feel like I'll just be more riffing tonight and like let everybody else who is really into the film go. But I definitely will I'll add where I have to add. And so for me, Back to the Future is, well, call it true Kino, because I know you love that, JJ, for this esoteric or occult review. But I'm not sure if it's a true Kino for me. But I really liked it, I have to say, in rewatch, which was just yesterday. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was weird and as 80s as I remembered.
Right.
And maybe, sorry, JJ.
No, I'll say, so when did you first, so you saw kind of the whole trilogy then, maybe, all at once then, right? You didn't really have to wait between the trilogies then.
It's interesting because I even watched the trilogy in anticipation for this episode, because I was like, I need to kind of know, like, I have to know the canon, like have a familiarity with like the text, right? So I guess I must have watched them on VHS or DVD, because like I'm more DVD era, but yeah, I definitely had VHS. I'm kidding. So, but I must have watched.
But there was no
you
you didn't have to wait like anticipating the next one coming out though, right? Because there was always the to be continued with a cliffhanger scene right at the end.
No,
of each
so
one, right?
I'm not old enough to yet be like affected by the cliffhanger.
Right.
That
That was very impactful on my childhood, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I was very hyped. So I appreciate that, Jen. So Julia, when did you first discover the Back to the Future, and were you in a similar situation as Jen, where you weren't left with a bunch of cliffhangers? Because I'd ask the same to Heidi, but I think I know the answer.
Well, shit. I just turned 30, but I still identify as 29. My pronouns are forever and young. And so my brother and sister grew up in the 80s. And so when I was really little, they would play like all the great 80s movies for me. I didn't have to wait. I just watched them all back to back to back. Back to the Future, Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future 3. My favorite is actually
the
first
cartoon,
one.
probably.
No, it's the first one and the third one. Actually, is my favorite.
Did you grow up with that though? Was that a cartoon in your childhood too?
What?
The cartoon version of Back to the Future?
I never fucked with it, but I will say I was super obsessed with the movies. And actually, I kind of had like a little bit of a crush on Michael J. Fox there for a minute, because it was like Teen Wolf and like some of those other like really cool 80s movies that he was doing.
He was killing it, right?
So
Alex
yeah,
P. Keaton.
dude. For sure. And I actually have a little bit of a story about that when we get into like stuff about the movie with Michael J. Fox. But yeah, no, dude, I loved Back to the Future. The first one and the third one, like I said, my fave. I didn't grow up in the 80s, but I definitely fuck with it heavy. I love all the 80s stuff.
Nice. Well, last but not least, Heidi, when did you discover the Back to the Futures, and were you as affected by these cliffhangers as I was?
Oh, definitely. I think I'm the oldest one on the panel. So I was like, this is crazy cool. And like, oh, I hope we have flying cars and all this from the second one. Like, it was just, the third one, you're right. It's just not, it doesn't hit.
I love
the
third one.
For me anyway. Yeah. So, but it was still cool.
I appreciate it more than I like other sequels, but I agree with you. I think the first two were more of a home run, I think.
Yeah, so good. And
how can you not like the third one? It's like the perfect ending.
The good one about that is
they didn't really end it though, did they?
I mean, they ended it enough for me to be satisfied with there not being a fourth one.
They're making a remake, supposedly.
I'm not interested in a remake. They ruin everything and they put their woke bullshit in it when they make remakes. They're going to cast a black guy to play Marty McFly, and they're going to have some tranny playing Doc, and I don't want it. I just don't want it. Leave it alone. It's
funny you mentioned that. It's funny you mentioned that, Julie. Are y'all familiar with the Back to the Future musical that has been a big thing in recent
Is there
years?
a tranny playing Doc Brown? Because I don't want to know.
No, but much like in this film we've discussed in the Back to the Future film, it's weird that Marty McFly goes back in time and he's kind of like got a thing with his mother's falls in love with him, and so there's this kind of incestual thing. Well, in the Broadway musical version, I think he went back in time and his dad had a thing for him. If you know what I mean.
No! See, that's what I'm.
It's not overtly that way, but like, I mean, I'll show you a clip here. Just stand by, please, 1 second.
Yikes!
I got a clip of exactly what I'm talking about.
George McFly is not gay.
Well, the Broadway version probably is, but I hear what you're saying. So isn't it? It is kind of fascinating how much this has spawned a cultural phenomenon there, right? Like this film, here it is, 40 years, later, right? Almost, right? I think it was July 3rd of 1985, right? That they released this film. So,
it's crazy.
And it's still right. And it's still very impactful because, like I said, they're doing Broadway musicals. If y'all recall in the film, in the sequels, they go to October 15th, 2015, right? Which
everybody freaked out on that day in real life,
right?
On Instagram. Oh, it's October 15th, 2015.
Yeah, they even did things like, I got a clip here. They even did things like this on the Jimmy Kimmel show on that date.
Doc, where are we? According to my calculations, this is the year 2015, Marty. The future.
That's
So,
dope.
I mean, this was, it's Jimmy, right, wrong, or different, whatever you think of Jimmy Kimmel. That's a big audience they're doing this on, as a, tribute to this culture that was created, I think. And it is the sci-fi culture in general, but I mean, it is specifically this film. And I think the esoteric elements that we're going to be discussing here this evening, some of these occult and or esoteric elements, is these things that are embedded in the storyline of the film is what makes it so standing through time as far as being a good story, great, told in a great film, right? And it's I mean, I don't know what I don't know if I've ever met someone who's like, oh yeah, Back to the Future. I've seen Back to the Future and it's super dumb. You know what I mean? Like, because I think you see that with some of the other sci-fi stuff, but I mean, it has a very wide, what I'm saying is it has a wide ranging audience for sci-fi folks, right? Like, you don't have to be a Star Wars person or a Star Trek person to be kind of, into this, I think, into this idea of Back to the Future and time travel.
And
That's a
it's so
great point,
embedded
JJ.
in
Sorry,
pop
Julian.
culture. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay, Julian. Please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's so embedded in pop culture, like a lot of movies still reference things from Back to the Future. So yeah, it's definitely timeless.
For sure. Jim, what were you going to say there?
Basically, just echoing both you and Julia's thing that it's a cultural phenomenon. Like, and I agree with you. This film has such wide-ranging appeal, but I didn't actually think of it as a sci-fi film until you really
said
said
I was
it.
thinking of.
But it really is it's a speculative fiction film. Maybe not a science fiction film as we would like normally think of it. Maybe not like Total Recall science fiction, but it is a speculative fiction. So from that angle, actually, now I'm like very like, oh, okay. Maybe I can dissect that.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Did you hear what Jen said?
Yeah, it just started storming here real bad. What were you saying, Jen? Can you repeat that for me?
Oh yeah, no problem, JJ. I just was saying it is a sci-fi film, but it's more of a speculative fiction film than perhaps like a Total Recall, which would be like a high science fiction because it's set in space,
Philip
right?
K. Dick
You have
style,
to travel. Right. So this is really a speculative fiction film. So you're totally right. And when you said that, people don't have to enjoy science fiction to go watch this film, but the film really is axial. Like, science fiction is axial to the whole film.
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out because we're not before we get into the actual, characters and plotline of the film. I would like to take us on our own little trip back to the future and go over how the sci-fi stuff began and how this stuff was impacted and which the culture in which to even create this film, right? What's the backstory on that, right? How did the nature of these tales even come about? Where's the root of science fiction? Where's the root of these ideas of time travel? And strangely enough, it largely revolves around a fellow that I described last week on Operation GCD Live in my tales of Cocaine Bob Evans meets Marvel Comics is DC and Marvel Comics Thelema fan fiction. That was all focused around a fellow by the name of Forrest J. Ackerman. He's actually known as Mr. Science Fiction, and he's the guy who coined the term science fiction. So I'm glad you pointed that out, Jen, because we're going to be getting into a little bit of that. Did anyone else have any more opening comments or statements here before we do a quick clip of the trailer to the film? Just to get folks refreshed on the. I mean, who doesn't know Back to the Future? But if folks at the interwebs are out there who don't, I have a brief clip in which to refresh folks' memories. But if anyone else has any other comments before we do that, please feel free. We're good? All right. Actually, you know what? I'm glad I stopped myself there for a second because, once again, this is how this whole conversation began. I have a clip of that first.
That's for messing up my hair.
The hell are you doing to my car?
Hey, beat it, Spook. This don't concern you.
Who you calling Spook, Peckerwood?
Hey, listen, guys. Look, I don't want to mess with no reefer addicts, okay?
Get home to your mama, boy.
I don't want to mess with no reefer addicts.
Did you ever hear the Peckerwoods before?
No, I'm not. No,
Yeah, they're a group I met in prison as well. They hung out with the Odinists. They all have like
They
Woody
called
Woodpecker.
themselves
Oh
Peckerwoods.
shit, that's a
Yeah,
white
they
like
have,
a white
Woody
nationalist
Woodpecker.
group, huh?
Yeah, they have like
Wow.
Woody Woodpecker tattoos and shit.
Get out of
That's
here.
funny.
That's their
It
like
is, dude.
official. Oh my
It is.
god, I'd never heard of that. I crack up because that is the term spook is obviously, I don't know how long it goes back to with intelligence operations. I presume that back that far, but that's the
Mhm.
term I know for intelligence operations, not the the reference from Back to the Future. But it cracks me up, and that scene's very kind of important in the whole narrative because Michael J. Fox's character Marty McFly gets locked in that trunk, and it is that trunk that's an epicenter. That being locked in that trunk's an epicenter of activity that I don't want to confuse and mess folks' brain holes up at the moment trying to explain time and how this that scene's imperative to this whole circular nature of time in this film, because I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. But I think that is a very important scene. It's not just comical to me in that regard. I think it's an important scene in the whole
Mhm.
business. But I got a quick clip here for the just to describe the storyline from the original trailer.
Steven Spielberg presents Back to the Future, a Robert Zemeckis film. Marty leads an ordinary life.
No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
Yeah, well, history is going to change.
And 1985 is not his year. But Dr. Brown is about to change all that.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
He's sending Marty 30 years back in time.
So I figured that was a good encapsulation of what at least the baseline of the film is, if folks are not familiar with it. But it is still this is still one of my favorite films. So I'm not gonna lie to you. I get excited just watching the trailer.
Me too. I've watched it twice within the last 24 hours preparing for this and love every
Nice.
moment of it. But I don't know what it means by Steven Spielberg presents a Robert
Yeah.
Zemeckis film, but that means he was in some way tied into the production of it?
Yes, ma'am. It
Or
was produced by Amblin Entertainment, which was owned by Spielberg with a minority interest by
Spielberg.
Zemeckis.
Okay.
Zemeckis hides in every film he's in. Period. Dot.
Exactly. Zemeckis, yeah, he was Spielberg's protege, and Bob Gale was best friends with Zemeckis because Bob Gale, much like some of the actors in this film, Bob Gale seems to have distanced himself from Hollywood, away from Zemeckis and Spielberg, just like Crispin Glover, the actor who played George McFly, and the female actress that played Marty McFly's love interest, Jennifer, whose name I can't think of at the moment. They both left after the first one, and years later, we'll get into some of this in a little bit here. Years later, it would be alleged by the Crazy Days and Nights entertainment lawyer fellow that it was all revolving around kid stuff, and where Amblin Entertainment and Spielberg were having a bunch of children audition for the film when there wasn't any children parts. So, and Crispin Glover made a bit of it, an issue of it on set, and et cetera, et cetera. But that's a whole big narrative there. But yeah, that's where Spielberg falls into it.
That was my first note that I have, is that Crispin Glover actually wrote a letter that you can go and read. Anybody can go and read it. He wrote a letter to Steven Spielberg. And I'm assuming it was after Back to the Future, about the kids stuff and the weirdness.
Well, yeah, you got to look long and hard for that letter, because I thought you could read it. It took me a minute to find out how to go to the web archive. It was posted on Crispin Glover's website back in 2005.
It's not easily accessible, but it is out there.
Ooh.
And
I'll have it in the show notes.
You have it in the show notes?
I will. I haven't put it there yet. I've been real lazy about that today, but I have it available. I'm going to put it in after the show. I have it available to show us here though as well.
I've talked about that before, and so has Sean McCann, about how Crispin Glover wrote this letter to Steven Spielberg about this kind of stuff. And I really like Crispin Glover. I think he's hilarious.
For sure. And he's actually involved in a very... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I watched another movie recently with him in it, and it just made me love him even more. Like, I feel like he's a no-nonsense kind of guy.
He seems that way, right? He seems that way because he really distanced himself from Hollywood and the whole Spielberg franchise. So, to that note, like, again, and we'll go into some more of that here in a minute, but the Crispin Glover really he was responsible for a landmark lawsuit for actors' rights there in Hollywood, as far as the Back to the Future 2 went, because they used his likeness against without any permission. So that's a whole other matter as well. But again, involves these producers, right? Involves this trio of folks: Bob Gale, Robert Zemeckis, Steven Spielberg, and really you can toss George Lucas into that, even though he's not involved in this film. He is kind of the third wheel there with Zemeckis and Spielberg. They're all kind of a trio. So interesting stuff, because then you're dealing with Star Wars, right? With the Spielberg, Lucas, and stuff, right? And then that's kind of all interesting to me in these sci-fi respects. I guess we could start off there, right? Some of that sci-fi stuff.
Well, let me just sorry, JJ.
You go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just want to jump in when you were saying the sci-fi stuff, because that's obviously very interesting to me from a metafiction perspective. Is that I never really thought of it before, and I don't know why. I guess I'm not a true Star Wars enjoyer, which is totally true. I actually don't really like Star Wars, but you can actually look at Star Wars in a really interesting Kabbalistic way, in the like dualities, like how dualistic it is, and how like it's very like Klipothic and like Tree of Life at the same time. It's like showing you both, but it's showing you kind of like the retard version.
Okay. Can you
It's
explain
not
that?
really.
I kind of operate the retard version of Kabbalah.
It's like very facile. It's like, oh, you get there through this, like, it's kind of syncretic, right? Like the joke is that he was reading the I Ching as he wrote that film, right? But they were obviously reading other things. I mean, give me a break. It's not just the I Ching, but so the reality is it has these metaphysical themes. Like, absolutely, people will fight me about it, but it really does. But it's not very deep. It's not like truly deep. It's not like actually studying. Like, I think you can learn.
Are you talking like the journey that Marty McFly goes on? Am I tracking what?
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Star Wars and just how that is interesting. You were making like the thing where it's like a parallel.
What's kind of similar, right? Because there's kind of a hero's journey between the two characters, right? Skywalker and Marty McFly. And
Marty McFly is a more interesting hero because he's I agree
with you. I agree with you on that one.
He's more dynamic. He's more American, right? He's just something much more interesting about him, much more relatable. There's nothing really relatable about Luke Skywalker to anyone. It's like, that's what I was trying to get at. I'm sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, you're good.
It's that the Luke Skywalker is kind of the messianic figure, right? No one can ever live up to that because it's too pristine from the beginning. So Marty McFly, he has a girlfriend. He's probably had sex, probably, he's lived his life, and it's like, that's much more. It's just much more relatable, I think.
Right.
He's a new American.
A good point. Girlfriend's not his sister, so well,
right.
That's a good kind of a meta analysis of what we're getting into here. Does anyone else have anything to share kind of in that regard? Kind of just your overview of what you saw on these things, just not the particulars necessarily, but kind of a meta analysis of what you looked at.
I definitely see a mystical journey, like a hero's journey. Go. I'm seeing, with the time travel, a lot of NASA like stuff. There's space stuff gonna pop in big time with the dad in the book. I don't know if you guys saw when he comes back, but when he comes back and everything changes, the book's about space and how he met his wife. It's like Space Lovers or something. And I'm seeing like a lot of divine, intervention. So yeah, I don't want to go
with the NASA stuff, Heidi. You're definitely reading my mind there, because I got some NASA stuff on deck for us here on the sci-fi background of this film.
I put down a lot of about the predictive programming type stuff that they snuck in there.
Like 9/11, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. And I have like a few notes on that, and then I have a few notes of like how they chose specific times, and even stuff in the background to me looked a little bit on purpose. But I did want to say they took a lot of time to make sure that this movie was perfect, and everything was very much on purpose. And something that a lot of people don't know is that another actor besides Michael J. Fox filmed half of this movie, and was on the way to finishing the movie before they said, "You suck dicks, we hate you, fuck off," and they recasted him with Michael J. Fox.
Who you talking about? Eric Stoltz?
Yeah, yeah. So, I don't
This
know if
handsome. You mean this handsome young gentleman?
yeah. Another big 80s movie, Some Kind of Wonderful. I don't know if you guys watched that, but he's the main guy in Some Kind of Wonderful, and he was supposed to be
Well,
Marty McFly.
That was
and he
Mask,
got
right?
like
This one was Mask, right?
Yes,
What-
Mask.
This film?
I know that show. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Rocky Dennis Mask.
Yeah. So he was supposed to be Marty McFly. He got like halfway through making the movie before they told him he sucked dicks and got rid of him and recasted him with Michael J. Fox. But like everything they did was very intentional, was very
you
on
sure you-
purpose.
You sure it was the sucking dick thing? He looks a little long in the face to me. Maybe that's why they recast him.
But I only say that to say every move that they made was very purposeful, and they had to get it right,
totally
and
agree
they
with you.
had to make it perfect. So I think that's also really interesting.
Well, I'd like to put a pin in that note there real quick, Julia, and have you. What are your thoughts on this? You're talking about predictive programming. They did. Now it's number 2. You see this really manifested in the film series, the trilogy. But Biff was written on Donald Trump, future Biff.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of that comes in with the second movie because
Right.
going back to the past but they still ended up putting a lot of stuff in the first one. But, there was a lot
sure.
in Back to the Future too that just screams like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, and same with number 3, but that begs the question of what is time and when did all these things happen? Because did these things always happen? Did Marty's parents only meet because he went back in time? You know what I mean? Did they ever meet in a sequence where
The
they didn't go
chicken
back
or
in
the
time?
egg thing. It's
Right.
the chicken or the egg thing.
Bill Clinton or the blue dress? Exactly.
There's actually things in that movie. If you pay attention to it, actually is telling you that this has already happened already. I have
Right.
stuff in there.
Like, why is Marty?
Only it's
why-
already
why
changed.
is-
This is done.
There
Think
you
to
go. I like
yourself,
where you're at, Nick, on that.
is Marty only friends with Doc Brown because he went back in the past and Doc Brown knew who he was? Or how the fuck did Marty become friends with a disgraced nuclear physicist while he's in high school?
That
Like,
always
it never
comes through. Where
explains
did that
that.
come
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Am I cutting out here? Can y'all hear me?
No,
you're okay.
I can hear you. You're good.
I got some bad storms. It keeps cutting out. No, that's a great point, Julia, because that renowned kind of disgraced physicist and a high school student being friends, I think that's a nod to Werner von Braun and Jack Parsons, who had a pen pal and phone call relationship in the 1920s as Parsons was a teenager.
So I shouldn't have said this before, but I wrote down Parsonian as my primary talking point for the entire film.
Nice.
Because exactly, I didn't know that factoid. So thank you, JJ. Obviously, we rely on you for those kinds of things, but it makes perfect sense, right? Because that's exactly what it is. And you can even say in like a hero's journey, like what Heidi was saying, he is like the Gandalf figure. He is, the guru, the teacher, the one to take him under the wing. And I also think it's really interesting about the time paradox because it's something like we discussed on the Carl Wood episode. It's like, what kind of universe do you believe in? Like if there's a closed universe or a fixed universe. So I'm going off what Nick sent me in note-wise, but this is all, I also agree with it, is I actually think it's more of an infinity universe kind of world where like the connections are kind of infinitely possible. So it's sort of like when we see them together, it doesn't really matter. It's just like the universe is causal that way. Like everything that they've done up to this point in time, they only exist now.
I totally agree with you. And I think so does Dr. Emmett Brown.
Great Scott!
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So no, I like the ideas that Nick, you and Nick are both pointing out here with these time loops. The what is time and when do these things happen and what is really cause and effect there? But before we get back to the science fiction,
yeah, is it even real? Because the dream world. Okay, so when he enters in from the past and he goes to town, the song that's playing is Mr. Sandman, and so
I like
this
that.
is
I've heard that
Yeah.
song. I'm very familiar with. That's the first time I've ever heard this song was this film.
Right. And then the mom walks up at the same time and she's like, "Oh my gosh, he's such a dream." And he's meanwhile saying, "This is a nightmare. This is a nightmare." And this is
There you
all
go.
happening at the same time. So I'm like, is this even
So
reality?
you're implying a kind of a meta analysis of a Wizard of Oz effect to the whole matter, right?
Very, very
Is that what
odd.
I'm hearing?
Yeah, that part. Yeah. Just that part right there definitely makes you go, okay, is this real? Is it a dream? Did he have a dream? I don't know.
Sure. Nick, what was kind of your meta analysis besides some of these time things you're pointing out there? Or do you have any other comments on that?
Well, I can tell you, like,
I know you have a deep analysis of these things, but I was gonna say, do you have when you were approaching that, was there something like overall besides maybe it was the Masonic stuff, like maybe it was the time stuff? What was jumping out to you specifically?
the hero's journey,
Yep.
especially with time and the electricity, and the clock,
Oh.
all that stuff, and
I figured you'd be big into the lightning aspects. I figured that was going to hit home with you in some regard.
For sure, yeah. I definitely thought it was more of like possibly like crossing the abyss or showing the hero's journey to having that experience, and I did eventually at one point started catching tons, in my opinion, tons and tons of Masonic stuff. So that's kind of where
There
I'm
you
going
go.
into my stuff. But I mean,
Nice.
there's a lot. I mean, I even ran gematria and stuff. I mean, you saw I have
Right.
decent amount of stuff.
No, you took an in-depth study. I'm looking forward to getting into some of those notes. So I appreciate everyone's kind of meta-analysis there. And as I was looking at it, I saw a little bit of kind of everything what y'all were saying is, a lot of my focus, I think when I was watching it again yesterday was looking back, seeing all this, I guess I was looking at it through more of a parapolitical lens, and I could see a lot of the parapolitics that were written into the film, like hardcore propaganda, like against the Libyans. That was at a peak time when, the Libyan disaster in America was, they were hyping that up, and I got some stuff on that here later for the parapolitics section of our discussion this evening. But besides that, this predictive programming aspect, I suppose, and to a certain degree, just the nature of time, these things wrap up on this one subject of this Donald Trump matter, and being the Biff Tannen character, right? Because it's not just that he's the Biff Tannen character, right? He ends up buying the property from John DeLorean, the guy who makes the DeLorean vehicle that's used in the film. Trump buys that Bedminster, New Jersey property, and that is where he primarily resides from the months of, I believe, May through August. That's his primary residence there in Bedminster, New Jersey. So that's the old.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, how weird is that, right?
There was actually, I wish I would have saved it now, but there was a lot of Trump and Elon stuff popping up in gematria, but it's just like it wasn't, my opinion, for what I was looking for. It wasn't going along with that, because then I started, one thing I did forget that, I'm sorry I'm adding it in now, something I found running gematria, tons of Russian connections, stuff with Russia.
Ooh.
And even with the pin he's wearing on his jacket goes back to a Russian thing. So
Interesting.
I might actually be on purpose.
I'm sure it is. I think a lot of these things in this film are very well plotted, and to that point, as well as Julia was saying. So, like, that's one thing I appreciate about this. I don't like a lot of sci-fi films. I mean, I do like Star Wars, but I don't do Star Trek and a lot of other sci-fi stuff. And it's largely because of the special effects. You're into all the space stuff, huh?
I love it all.
Did you see the hat tip? Speaking of space, did you see the hat tip to Kubrick?
No, I didn't. What was that? What was
Yeah,
the hat tip
so
to
there's a little hat tip to Kubrick in there when they have the original the amplifier at the very beginning of the movie. He goes to plug in and there's a little tiny tag on it and it says CRM 114 on the amplifier, which is a total nod from one of his destroyed messages decoded in the 1964 Dr. Strangelove and Jupiter Explorer and Space Odyssey. So I found that
I did not know that, Heidi.
Not on my own. I didn't. Yeah, I just looked that up.
Yeah,
that is super wild. So to that note of all the science fiction in this film and like that, I think everything is well plotted out in this film like that. And and to that note, they really focus on those things. There's not a lot of special effects scenes. Most of the special effects scenes you see in this film are the lightning scenes. They really dedicate a lot of time on making that lightning very, pop out. They want to make it pop for you, right?
Or like
So-
when the DeLorean takes off and there's the two little streaks of fire.
Yeah, that's about it.
Stuff like
That's
that.
it.
That's about
Yeah.
it. But I was gonna
Everything
say
else is very well plotted out, and I think they really only shot like about 3 or 4 like less than 4 dozen. I think it was about 35 different scenes. This film is very, it's not a very complex shot film, but it's a great storyline. It's it really grasps your attention throughout the whole film. Even when I watched it yesterday, I was still very much involved in watching the film and not like, doing other things while I'm, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I think that speaks again to the esoteric secrets that are embedded in the film. Is it really grabs your subconscious, but and on that nature with subconscious and time, like when there's a really surface way to look at the Donald Trump situation, but again, I look at it through like what is time, and like did the writers of this film there's a concept that I like to consider of a guy by the name J.W. Dunn about the dream state. As we're talking about the dream state as being embedded in this film. And the nature of time in the dream state is your subconscious can kind of remember the future in a sense, whereas it doesn't operate in a linear timeline like we do in our awakened state. And then that way you can almost remember the future. This would explain some deja vu elements, but also would explain incidents of precognition. And J.W. Dunn wrote a pamphlet on this back in the 1920s called An Experiment in Time, and it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever read. So
Well,
it really begs the question:
interesting,
are they just coming up with this idea from something that they possibly got into a dream state? That's where the idea came from, and it's really they're just seeing something in the future in their dream state, and they're just in their current time. They're just transcribing it into a matter where it looks very similar, right? It's, they do predict a lot of things relative to Donald Trump, right? Go ahead, Jen.
No, I just wanted to say that I totally agree with that writer that you're citing, JJ, because it's very interesting because it actually correlates really well to Buddhism. Time is of the mind, time is of the nine, expressed in nine. So exactly what you're saying. It's like you are the chronopoetic master. You are the time king of your own timeline kind of thing. So there's something really interesting about that. And then also you were saying like the dreaming state. Well, what if I told you like the dreaming mind is the color of turquoise, but the waking mind is the color of lapis? So when you were saying like what is the color of lightning? Well, lightning is actually considered to be both of those things because it's also clear. Very scientological, I know, but
and to your point, his address when he makes it back home to Hill Valley, which is an oxymoron you can't Hill Valley. Okay, whatever. But his address is 9303. And so 3 times 3 is 9, or we have 33 right there too. So I found that really interesting. That was on the house. So 9303. And that's exactly what you're saying, Jen. It's all nines. It's the 9 and then 303. 3 times 3 is 9, or 33.
Moon,
Did you say that 9303 is on? Would you say
on
that
his house? That's his address when he's coming up. And so that was really interesting. And if we move past him coming home to his house, I have something to say about that, but I don't know if we're there yet. So
no, yeah, we can jump into that here shortly when we go through the film and the characters here in a minute. But no, I just got lost in like 3 different things at the same time. So give me a second. Where was I? I forget where I was at now. I apologize there. Let's I guess let's jump. Anyone have any other comments on time or some of these other concepts before we jump into the background of the sci-fi nature here?
I had one thing that I noticed to do with the time thing that I wanted to say,
or dream stuff, because I think that's very interesting too that Heidi brought up there.
I didn't put anything down about the dream stuff because I was so fixated on this other aspect. But at the very beginning of the movie, when it's showing all the clocks, and there's like a million clocks in Doc Brown's house, even down to like one of the clocks is like a guy hanging off of a clock tower. Like everything in every little scene, it's like it's so on purpose to predict what's going to come later in the film.
Nice.
also what's to come later in like reality too. And I'm sure you know
Wow.
where I'm going with that, but
I was about to say, well, is there any difference?
and then I did do the name Marty and I did the name Emmett to see what they mean. And
Yep.
so Marty means warlike or of Mars, and it refers to the Roman god of war, Mars. And then Emmett, Dr. Emmett Brown, his name means universal or truth. So I think both of those names are very interesting for the two main characters there.
Oh yeah. Well, and Jennifer means, so if we're gonna do characters, I do have a couple things,
Well,
but I can bring it back
real-
in later for the
Real
time.
quick, Heidi, you mentioned Hill Valley as an oxymoron. That's where I got stuck there a moment ago. That is a good point. Like, there's got to be some meaning to that. Why are they using such an obscure name then, right? For
So
the name of the town.
I'll go
Oh, sorry,
back.
Heidi.
I'll go backward. Sorry, Jen. I'll just say
No,
really
that's
quickly that I think that when they're talking about this time part, when they're
Yep.
not in reality, the time is running on the clock. But when they're in reality, the time is fixed because the clock is broken. So we have to look at this like Doc Brown is almost like Zeus, and
Yep.
they've got Poseidon there and all that, but I'll do that when we get into characters. But what I'm saying is also you've got like the flux capacitor, which is chaos, right? It's the
Okay.
Y. Yes.
Mhm.
And so when they're using it and they're in wherever they've traveled to, like whether it's past or future, whatever, it's again chaotic because it's not in sync with reality. That's all I was going to say on the timing part, but I'm weird.
No, that was great, Heidi. That was really great. Legit.
I'm sorry,
And
Jen. Go ahead.
the Marty thing was really interesting because then you'd have to say he's a Gavaratic hero, right? Like he's coming from Mars, he's coming from Gavara, but he has to travel on the lightning path. So that's something that Heidi said that was really interesting about Hill Valley. And I think I know why you got stuck on it because it is a paradox, JJ. That
It
is a
doesn't make any
paradox.
sense. I never really
Right.
considered it, but it makes no sense until you just said. I was like, wait a second.
But it's a
Doesn't make any sense.
Kabbalistic paradox that's resolved in the center, the hidden pillar.
The
So you
Well,
can
and
think
he
of
film's
the
about
lives-
film
paradoxes,
as
right?
plus
It's all
ultra.
about a time paradox, right? They're
Yeah.
saying, oh, that's a paradox, and this is a paradox, and
Yeah.
Well, he
these are
lives
paradoxes.
in Lion's Estate, and you see this
Mhm.
Lion's
It's
Estate with the
Tiferet.
two pillars,
There you go.
but you go in between the Lion's Gate,
Mhm.
and
Oh.
then what does that do? You know what we know about Lion's Gate, right? With 88, did that 88 miles per hour charge the Lion's Gate,
Mhm.
and with double infinity where it's not even real? You know what I'm saying?
I have something on the Lions. If we're getting into that, I have something about the Lions. Should I save it?
Can we table that for a moment? When we start getting into the film, we'll discuss the settings a
Yes.
little bit like that. Because I want to just do a quick background, tie into these names y'all were just saying. Do a quick background on the sci-fi and the predictive programming aspect of that real quick. With Donald Trump, that is. And then we'll get into the entire film here after that. If y'all don't mind bearing with me here for a moment, because we already brought up some of these names, so I want to kind of jump into this point real quick, and it goes right into the sci-fi stuff. So we were talking about how the meaning of these names and some of the background there. Well, jumping ahead to Back to the Future 3, we learned this about Doc Brown.
No Browns. Well, maybe it was a mistake, Doc. Maybe that grave wasn't yours. It could have been another Emmett Brown back in 1885.
No.
I don't know. Did you have any relatives here back then?
The Browns didn't come to Hill Valley until 1908, and then they were the Von Brauns. My father changed our name during the First World War.
Von Braun, like Werner Von
See,
Braun,
dude,
and these
how
NASA
can you
references?
say the first and the third one aren't the best when they put shit like that in the third one?
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh.
come
yeah.
I mean, it's
on.
good.
I forgot about
Don't
that.
get me wrong. I enjoy these things. There's nuggets of information all around there, and they even have some Thelemites in the third one, right? With Flea, he's a member of the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right.
Blood Sugar
Yes.
That
Sex
would
Magic.
totally make sense because, like, you can consider like I call it NASA Space Kabbalah is how I've referred to it before, but you could
I
consider
like
the way
that.
they
That's a good way to
teach
put it.
because with the way they
Mhm.
teach the planets is actually Kabbalah. You could understand it like that. So the first introduction to what people think of, but it's
Right.
actually the inverse because it's the physical densities. So it's actually not Kabbalah, but you could say that it's the first way, the first layer that people understand. So it would make sense if they're doing all these von Braun references, because obviously that's what he was also talking about.
By the way,
Interesting.
he
And
loved the
it just
Mormons.
ties in, right? It just ties into the
Yeah.
whole sci-fi background and these rockets and NASA, right? With a reference like that, right?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Oh, I said Von Braun just was definitely in the good with the Mormons. He made a theological film with them that nobody else
Oh,
was allowed in.
big
Only
time.
Von Braun. Yeah. So it was weird. I think that's very interesting, and what we know about Parsons and his mother. Well, we'll save that for later. But yeah, just
How
all
about just
that.
Parsons in it? How about just Parsons, right? Because he's just such an interesting
Right.
character with his whole background, right?
Absolutely.
So that guy there, Forey Ackerman, meet Forey. He's the fellow that I use as a center point in this narrative of Cocaine Bob meets Marvel Comics, my Operation GCD live last week. Forey Ackerman is the guy, Mr. Science Fiction. He's the guy who coins the term sci-fi, right? And he's the literary agent for all these folks. He knew Parsons, he knew Hubbard. He was an OTO guy at Parsons Lodge, apparently. He was an early Scientologist. He knew all the Marvel stuff. He knew Cocaine Bob, of course, with all these characters, and that's Stan Lee of Marvel Comics, who was a good friend of Forey Ackerman as well. So Forey Ackerman, for a quick rehash on that, he's a legendary figure in Hollywood. I decided to Muppetize him like anyone else these days, because he actually is a Muppet too, just this guy in general. He's a legendary dude. Like I said, sci-fi stuff, literary agent for every sci-fi writer you can think of: Isaac Asimov, Bradbury, Hubbard, all these guys. Arthur C. Clarke. He ran their little sci-fi club in Los Angeles. He was the head of that. Again, big time occultist. Ran a thing called Monsters and Magazines. Monsters, famous Monsters magazine, and the actual picture of him is not nearly as funny as that, but if you look at kind of the onset of these stories of where a film like Back to the Future comes from, it goes back to Forey. So the idea, this is Wikipedia, the source of all information on the interwebs. It's a good jumping off point at times. I do like to see what the normative view on subjects are too, but here's a good quote here regarding time travel and fiction article here. And like I said, it goes to Forey Ackerman. So Forey Ackerman noted in his 1973 anthology of the best fiction of the year that the theme of getting hold of tomorrow's newspaper is a recurrent one, in regards to science fiction and these matters of time travel, right? So this is the first, to my understanding, this is the first time travel story in fiction. H.G. Wells' time machine. Not really the same thing we're talking about here, but this is the early onset of kind of the subject, right? Do y'all agree on that? Is there a earlier piece that y'all remember?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, because that's 1895, and shortly thereafter we see things. It's not really time travel, but we see this story by Mark Twain, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. And I saw a comment earlier on in the chat before I lost all sight of what was going on there regarding time slips. This is a time slip, right? We kind of talked about time slips recently on the Occult Rejects as well, right, Nick?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was with Rye, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's time travel. You don't have a DeLorean, right? But I mean, it's the same concept, though, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well,
are y'all familiar with this story?
I'm not.
No,
I am, but I think that there is something interesting that you're picking up on, JJ, is that there is a difference in a way, but because the DeLorean is the heck a lot, so it's like the vehicle. Like I talked a lot about this with Heidi on our episode. Is like the Mormons have this idea. They're more into the palace architecture, the temple architecture. They're into bringing things back down into the diamonds and Netzach. That's what they're all about, right? Like Mormon money magic. Well, that's Mormon money magic.
Yes, sir.
But this actually, and I even texted Nick this, and as I said, yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. This is like a Hode maxing, like double dragon, because in Chinese, interestingly, 8 is a dragon number, so it's like 88 double dragons. Let's fucking go, like Hode,
like the video game, dude.
Just like 88. Yep.
Yeah,
I think that has to do with even parts of your brain too. I'm not gonna take it that far.
As far as,
and did you think it was weird at the mall parking lot before they're taking off that you see the visual of JC So like Jesus Christ, and then penny, like copper. And that stood out to me so much. And
Oh, that's
I
a
mean,
good
I was
fucking
like, is this
catch.
charging? Yeah. Is this like charging this situation? And then the guns come with iron. They're
Oh, I'm
shooting.
glad you said that. I got that clip on deck here for us.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
part of that
yeah.
predictive programming because that was the Libyans, right? That was the
Yes.
Libyans assaulting them in the parking lot, and that was a
That's
And then-
great.
time where Muammar Gaddafi was the Bin Laden of that era, right? That was the Bin Laden
Right,
of
and
that
then
time.
Doc is wearing the biohazard sign behind on his
Yeah.
jumper, and that can also be the skull and crossbones. So is he
Oh, that's
like,
interesting.
you know, I mean, I'm
Because
just
they want to
saying,
scare
like,
everybody about the Libyans and nuclear war at the time, right? This was the era of the mid '80s, right? It was a nuclear scare,
Yep.
terrorism by the Libyans. And while we're on that note, I got a clip here for us.
Awesome.
Oh my God. They found me. I don't know how, but they found me.
Run for it, Marty! Who? Who do you think? The Libyans!
It was the Libyans. They did it. Now, I know I wasn't really old enough to really understand what was going on. I do remember kind of the whole Libyan scare there around that time, right, in the media. I don't know. Again, it was a very Bin Laden situation, but I don't want to. I got a different clip to kind of explain that to folks real quick to emphasize that point from comedian Jim Brewer.
It's like, oh, all right. And I took his newspaper. It was a newspaper on his little desk. I'm like, yeah, all right. I took his newspaper and we'll show him. And it was huge news. It was right on. When you went home, you only had 4 channels to watch on TV. It was before there was even remotes. So just your father go, hey, turn on channel 4, and you have to get up. Like, and so everything was next on the news. Muammar Gaddafi's America. Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi shoots 6 missiles. Muammar Gaddafi.
I think we get the point there.
So that's what the whole Libya thing was about?
Yeah, so that was the height of that activity, what he's talking about. So Jim Brewer was telling a story there on one of those Comedy Central, This Is Not Happening, I think. And he actually is talking about working at that Valley Stream Mall. Nick knows what I'm talking about. And out Long Island, and he was working at the Sears, and he was playing a prank on a fellow coworker, this old dude who was giving him shit as a teenager. And he called the dude, across to a different department, and was just telling him he was claiming to be Muammar Gaddafi on the phone, and he was going to bomb the mall there or drop 6 missiles on the mall because that's what all the media kept saying: 6 missiles, 6 missiles. So they ended up evacuating the whole mall and called the FBI. And it's a funny story, but yeah, that was the Gaddafi era of the 80s.
I never knew that.
It's some wild stuff, right? That story cracks me up though. It's unfortunate circumstance to find you're in playing a prank and suddenly the FBI gets called, because some idiot can't realize it was a prank.
Right.
He actually thinks Muammar Gaddafi's calling the paint department at Sears and telling them that he's going to bomb. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, back to this these matters of the backstory of kind of how Back to the Future came to be through these matters of science fiction and whatnot. So you see the reference Jules Verne a lot in the film. In fact, I believe he later names his kids Jules and Verne, right? In number 3, Doc Brown, that is.
Yes.
I know he named his dog Einstein, and you want to talk about Masons?
And the other one was Copernicus, right? The other dog was Copernicus, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a lot of space stuff, science stuff, and then Jules and Verne is a reference to Jules Verne. Obviously, he didn't do any time travel stuff. Around the world 80 days, 20,000 leagues under the sea.
He did Journey to the Center of the Earth, which I think is like a real fucking thing.
That's the big one I was missing. This one he's not as known for, but thank you, Julia, for that one. I was stuck there on the other title. From the Earth to the Moon. So this is an idea. This is one of the early. I think this is the earliest idea of rockets, right? And they even talk about a moon landing and a projectile that looks a lot like what Werner von Braun would develop as a rocket. This obelisk-looking object, right? See what I'm saying here on the cover, right? And it's it was written in 1865, and it's talking about. He wrote a sequel to it, Around the Moon, but it's talking about landing with a projectile with a goal of landing on the moon. So, I think that's interesting because again, we go back to that von Braun reference, right? Now we got the earliest version. So everything I covered that in the last show I did last week on this Thelemite science or fan fiction ideas of Marvel and DC Comics, because all of these ideas of science and space that we know from revolving around rocketry and space travel revolves around they're written in fiction first by writers whose literary agent was Forey Ackerman, and who Forey Ackerman was the head of that sci-fi writers club in which all of these writers were also a part of. So, and they also were all apparently involved by Forey Ackerman's own admission. They were all involved in first the OTO and then later Scientology. And Forey stuck around in Scientology for a while. He didn't leave until the early 50s. So he seemed pretty dedicated in these matters. But we learn about these ideas of space first through these matters of science fiction, and then later supposedly science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it really impacts a lot of stuff. I don't want to go too far here, but it really impacts a lot of stuff just outside of what we're thinking of regarding occultism in our modern day with these science fiction notions. So I learned this from this book, Operation Mind Control, from Walter Boart. Great book. Highly recommend if anyone, folks of the interwebs, want anything to do with matters of mind control operations, not just the MK Ultra style experimental stuff. Boart writes a whole book in 1970, circa 78, describing how it's operational. So, but he puts here in this book how Michael Aquino, Old Temple Asset Michael Aquino, wrote 3 different Star Wars fan fiction, and used to, he was reported as having been identified standing outside the gate at Skywalker Ranch, forcing copies of these manuscripts upon people who employed by George Lucas, friends with Zemeckis and Spielberg. Since Lucas does not receive unsolicited manuscripts, the manuscripts were returned unopened upon several occasions. One was subsequently published in a monster magazine. I'll let you know which monster magazine it was. It was the one of
That's
Ackerman.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But you know what?
All loop back around today, huh?
Are you familiar with Fritz Springmeier at all? He wrote a lot of stuff about underground programs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He talks about how they use Star Trek in a lot of the programs.
Yep.
And there's a lot of weird stuff with Star Trek in general. I love Star Trek, but that's beside the point. And there was an actress in Star Trek, the first one, the original one. Her brother was a member of the Heaven's Gate cult.
Come on.
So I'm telling you, this is all fucking
come on.
connected. I'm serious.
I did not know that. I love the Heaven's Gate cult. Not like I want to join them, but
yeah, he killed himself in the Heaven's Gate cult.
I just put a pin in my brain hole on that one. We're definitely gonna be talking about that in the future here, Julia, because that's that's some great
I
stuff.
love subjects like this because I love science fiction stuff. I think Jules Verne actually inspired all of the Inner Earth talk and like the new Godzilla, Kong movies with like the Inner Earth stuff. That all comes from Jules Verne, dude.
I'm glad you said that. So just like that all comes from Jules Verne, and then we get these ideas of what we're supposed to accept space as from folks like Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov, Forey Ackerman's buddies, and he's their literary agent. The idea that dinosaurs may still roam the earth comes from this guy, Willy Ley. He's a German fella, scientist fella, and sci-fi writer who was also part of that same sci-fi club in Los Angeles, whose literary agent was also Forey Ackerman. So these ideas that are getting created through cryptozoology and whatnot, this dude is the one who literally started the idea that dinosaurs still exist on the planet in 1949.
And then what? Did he help?
This dude also wrote a book in 19. What's that?
Did he help with Spielberg on fucking Jurassic Park?
Well, look, I mean, we're not that far off from this whole crew, right? So, like, is Spielberg kind of the next generation of the same kind of club, right? That's kind of how I'm almost looking at it, right?
Sure.
So Willy Ley writes a book in 1912 called Conquest on the Moon with none other than Werner von Braun. Again, Werner von Braun, shortly thereafter, starts a pen pal and telephone call relationship with Jack Parsons, old Marvel Jack Parsons, right? Von Braun's in Germany. Parsons is in Pasadena, What are these two? How do these two link up, right? And why are they talking on the phone? International calls are not that, common back then, right?
Weird.
How weird is that?
I wonder if he was. I wonder if this guy was friends with Kubrick at all, because Kubrick and von Braun were friends. And he
Well,
did
now you
2001: A
just hit me with
Space Odyssey.
now you just hit me with a different one because I don't know what the intersection of Ackerman and Kubrick is, because definitely Isaac Asimov and Clarke were, because they were on not only on the set, they were also involved with the Apollo 11 missions at the time, as far as they were quote unquote technical advisors, and
Well,
they
then
helped
Kubrick's got to be in there.
yeah, they got to be in there. Something. Well, Jack Kirby too, right? So 2001: A Space Odyssey, they had a comic book from Marvel Comics that was supposed to come out simultaneously. That was from Jack Kirby. Again, Cocaine Bob meets Marvel Comics, right? We're talking about the same club of folks, right? Jack Kirby's one of Stan Lee's associates, obviously.
They're all in there. They have to be. They
Right.
absolutely have to be.
So I appreciate y'all joining me here on that quick journey and how we got to the story of Back to the Future, and again how it revolves around. I took y'all on a Back to the Future yourself, talking about how I was just discussing these things last week inadvertently. Did not even consider at the time how much this tied into this future one we already had planned, because I didn't really consider how much of the sci-fi connections there really were, but it's obviously pretty deep. So onto the film.
Sorry, JJ, I'm just gonna jump in really quick. Promise.
Shoot. What you got?
Well, okay, so the Michael Aquino thing. Since I've read a lot of his writings, it totally makes sense to me. He did identify as a Sith. I think he even has a fucking story about it.
You're telling me he's a Zizian? Is he a Sith Lord?
I mean, look at the colors. It's like it's his Banah thing. It's like very like, sapphire tablet, like flashing red. It's like just like he was just obsessed with like Kabbalah and obsessed with the Sephira and obsessed with like trying to densify them and make them into like real things. And it like goes to your point about Werner von Braun making like the dick-shaped rocket. It's like that is like very right. If you're like Marty, he's the Martian, maybe, but he's like a martial figure. So he's like erect. He's ithophilic, we would call it in art history. So it's like a projection. It's like the projecting off the earth with fire, just like Julia said. The car has fire behind it. It needs fire for, like Heidi and I were talking about in the chat. It needs fire for transmutation. But it's not the only thing that happens. Like we said, there's a lot of mercurial elements in it. And Heidi caught that amazing point about JCPenney, because you need copper to transmute gold. So one thing I was interested in, independent of Nick's amazing note pack, was what is the composition of a DeLorean, and like how could you sort of Kabbalistically map steel, and specifically the steel that was used to make DeLoreans. So it is actually an interesting kind of question if you're looking at it from like an alchemical or Kabbalistic lens. So you would have to consider it to be Tiferatic, that Lionsgate sort of element, but it coming from Mars, because the content is largely iron. So it's a majority. So that's really interesting, I think, to think about. Like there's a lot of Marshall stuff. Elon, like to bring up something Nick said, like, yeah, there is kind of an Elon thing, because he's obsessed with Mars. And obviously Werner von Braun is obsessed with Mars, because it's that question in modern occultism. Do men come from Mars or do they come from Mercury? But I think that Hero's Journey makes room for they can come from both. Or they can maybe grow through the paths and come out, through the fire, if you want to call it that, and enter apotheosis, whatever.
Fair enough, but that is the story. I like where your head's at, and that is where the story where we are at the moment, right? With the storyline here, Back to the Future, revolves around the transport of Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox's character, through this here fancy car that we can get into more of this discussion on the car here, because after we develop more of this tale here, but I find it very unique that for many reasons they chose this car. But so he meets Doc Brown, and they start doing this, seemingly start interrupting time, right, and disrupting reality. But really, I would argue that's just the nature of reality, was always going to happen that way. But what are your all's thoughts here on the characters that we lay out the story here of Back to the Future, right? We got a teenager meeting the old scientists, right? Again, I would argue that's a Marvel Jack Parsons, Werner von Braun, right? Dr. Emmett von Braun relationship.
I definitely saw this in a different weird. I was telling Jen in the chat just that I saw it as he was like a Zeus type character, because he's gonna be messing with the lightning later. There's more. I don't want to like give it all right now, but like
No, go
like,
ahead. Please describe the character. That sounds. I like where your head's
Sure.
at. Yeah.
Sure. So he's gonna, overthrow Cronus, but we also have Pluto. We have plutonium.
So he's going to overthrow
And-
Cronus by defeating time or by traveling through time. That's like a defeat of Cronus. Is that what you're saying?
Well, he's gonna get him out of the unreality to send Marty back through to reality by harnessing with his rod that's wrapped like a kundalini, and he's gonna harness the energy to hook it onto the car. That's what I see.
Okay.
And then Poseidon's there at the under the sea dance. There's a statue of him. If you catch that, he's there. Pluto's there. Plutonium. It's the tale of, them defeating Kronos.
Ooh. Yeah, the under the sea dance certainly seems very telling because that was one of the scenes. Like I said, there's not a lot of scenes filmed here, and they put a lot of effort into really decorating that. I feel like.
Yeah, they really pushed
I
it.
put that in.
Yeah,
I put that in my notes too. That they spent a lot of time decorating that.
Yeah,
and
that was very ornately.
the kiss and all that, like on and on about this under the sea dance. It was like over and over and over. It was a lot.
Well, to that same nature, is that like why do you think Marty McFly is always wearing this life
Red?
preserver? Well, you're
And they
talking about under the
mentioned
sea,
it
like
several
life preserver there,
times.
right? So, like, yeah, they joke on him, right? He gets clowned on about it.
Yeah, when he walks into the the place to get wherever.
At the diner.
Yeah, the diner.
So would you fall overboard? Is that what he says? Is that what he says?
Something like
And
that.
then when he gets hit by the car and Lorraine's parents take him in, and she's like, I figured you're a sailor because you have the life preserver on.
Yeah, what's the use
And
of
then-
Calvin Klein in that aspect too, right? Because he's wearing Calvin Klein underwear, so he starts going by the name
Well,
Calvin Klein in 1955.
because that's Mormons, because he got his new name and he got his underwear. And got his underwear, he got his new name.
I didn't even
So-
consider it that way.
He went through the veil and he's a new person.
That's not specifically
now.
Mormon though.
Yeah. But I mean, like in general,
Well,
you
in
know,
general, any magician would take a new name. I mean,
Right,
it's
right.
not just Mormon.
Is it significant?
It's not just a Mormon thing.
So you're
No,
saying
no,
that that's an OTO aspect too, as far as
That's
that
any
kind of
magician, not just
Just
a
and
magician.
Masons
so
and
it's ceremonial
they all
magicians,
get a
generally
new
speaking.
name.
Then
Yes.
Is it
And the
significant that they're purple and that they bring that up? I've never seen purple underwear
People would be
before.
royalty. There would be probably more of like making a claim that you've actually seen both sides.
Yeah, red is both life and death. Yeah, the red.
Yeah, resolution of paradox.
Mhm.
Bringing the blue and the red together, the material and the spiritual. And that was a great
And even
point
when he
Heidi
goes
had,
to
too.
the dance, yeah, he's in a reddish jacket again, even at the dance. So they keep
Well, I
it
thought
in
that
red.
was an amazing point. Sorry, Heidi.
No. I was just saying they keep him in red.
See, this is really interesting, but I want to say the thing really quick about what Heidi was saying, just to build off that.
Please.
In Vedic astrology, Jupiter is the planet of the teacher. So it's the spiritual teacher, not necessarily the material teacher, which is actually more Gevuratic in Hebrew Kabbalah. So that's actually really interesting as well. And but I agree with what Heidi's saying. In like I don't use obviously the Greek cosmology, but I understand what she's saying, and it makes a lot of sense because there's this third idea of. So we spoke a little bit yesterday about the hyper Uranian, the trans Plutonian. Obviously, both of those ideas are in this film. But then there's like the third idea, which is the trans Neptunian. So it goes exactly with this under the sea, the dreaming god. That's even one of the names for Vishnu. And if you mapped him to the tree, he'd be like a Chokma, so a very Neptunian figure. He's dreaming under the supernal ocean. He's sleeping on his back in his serpent, like a dais, I guess you could say. So yeah, it's like the dreaming god. He's sleeping reality into existence. And then there's this last idea, and then I promise I'll shut up. But the idea of space versus time. And this goes perfectly along with that because Vishnu is assigned space. Whereas, like as Heidi said, she called him Kronos. I'm going to call him Shiva, but he is time, at least in one version. So
Well, and
it
the women
is
too. Yeah, the women. We can't forget the women too.
So
Like
it's
they
always this
play.
battle. It's always this battle in like sort of occult thinking. Like, do you master space? Do you master time? Like, which one is it? Which one is superior? And it's because it's both poles, right? It's really it's a Hokmah and Binah. So it's both of those
Yes.
things, and they're like it's like electric, like very lightning. So, but that's how they kind of spark off each other.
Interesting. We
And
have any
then
more
we've got
thoughts here on the on Marty
Jennifer.
McFly as a character?
Oh, not Marty. No, sorry.
His girlfriend. You want to go to his girlfriend next?
Yeah, yeah. I just think at the very beginning when she's coming out of the school, well, first of all, Jennifer is white wave, and so that's represented with Venus, absolutely. And she's at the top of the stairs, and he never ascends up, but she starts coming down, and she meets him, but he doesn't go up, which makes total sense. And then we've got the mom too, but her name is Lorraine, which doesn't translate into much, but La Reine, like queen, and Isis, and then we get into, I'm gonna marry my son thing. So then that gets weird. So
you were saying it doesn't relate to much, but I think Nick was talking about it relates to Kronos, right? Lorraine.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, and some of the gematria when I get to it. Yeah.
And
Let's do it.
Jennifer
Yeah,
was
do
Venus,
Lorraine.
right?
Oh yeah.
And that's what Hadi was just saying too, right? So you came up with some gematria conclusions, concluding what Hadi was just saying without from two separate angles. It sounds like.
Yeah, I'd have to look for that.
So that's pretty interesting. I know when you were saying that, Heidi, I was just, I was like, wait a second. I've heard I've heard some similar things before, and I was looking back at Nick's notes. I'm like, yep, Nick already reached these conclusions through gematria.
Sorry, Nick, I wasn't stealing your thunder.
No, I think it's interesting because you're seeing it from one perspective. He's doing gematria and coming up with that same conclusion, and it's reaching these things. That's
yeah, because there's a deeper logic to it.
Even
Like
with her Pluto is totally matching too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like this. That's interesting.
When the prince is at Mercury, like Marty's at Mercury before he leaves on his magic journey. Okay. The mother, the Venus, to bring up what Heidi said, so we're kind of synthesizing Nick and Heidi's ideas. She's attracted to him. That's kind of the idea, but it's really it's like electromagnetic. That's really what it is. But it's a confusing feeling, right? It's easily confused. That's very hermetic. That's very mercurial. It's like kind of entwined. So the mother,
because father and he took his father's place when he got hit by the car, so he becomes the father's journey. And it's linear then. And like, just like when I say Isis and stuff, like I'm talking about like with the Isis Horus, what does she do? She says he's the reincarnation of her husband. So that combination makes total sense,
Yes. Oh, real quick, JJ, if you don't mind.
Please.
Yeah, I wasn't speaking up fast enough. Before we left off of Marty McFly, I did actually have some things just real quick. I did with him because I did have a section.
Please do. There's a lot going on with his character, right? I mean, he's kind of the that not only the hero's journey, but he's kind of that Masonic kind of what do they call it? Like sun god kind of thing, right?
Well, see, this is something that I've said before. And Horus would fit in there just with
Horus. That's what I was thinking of. Was kind of a Horus situation.
Well, the thing is, in my opinion, the hero's journey, I mean, you're going to have different characters for the same exact person or energy. It's just going to have a different name. Like I've said before, things like Thoth and Horus and Ra, it's all the same, technically, I guess, energy or thing. It's just during a different time and space. It's something else. But
right, that's the term hermetic, right? That's Thoth and another character, right?
Very alchemical, yeah. You from going from one character to the next.
Yeah, and they mash them together, and then they become Hermes Trismegistus, right?
Yeah. But with Marty McFly as
that is the nature of occultism, it seems.
Yes. Marty McFly as Mercury and Hermes, kind of like an archetype. Yeah, but I did have in there too what Cosmic Peach mentioned. His name is Mars though too.
Yeah, Martian, right?
Yeah, Mars. Yeah, or like War of Force.
That's what I was going to say. So it's kind of this chaos effect, right? Is that what that means? Is like a chaos effort or a war effort?
You need chaos. You need chaos to create change, regardless.
Right.
Someone's going to have to do it. messenger. I looked at him as a messenger between both worlds. I even looked at it like in the beginning when he plays the guitar, kind of like a Logos of Thunder. Hermes invents the lyre. So I mean, I did wonder if there was like somewhere a connection with that. He's kind of a trickster. Again, even playing the guitar, that's vibration and sound.
And he cranks it up too, right, to the loudest degree, right? So that's a very trickster element to that, right?
Technically, he does go to the future and brings back knowledge. I mean, he knows what's his face's death. So I mean, he is someone who was going back and forth with bringing knowledge.
Yeah.
Hermes, or I could be wrong about the exact person. He had wings on his shoes. This guy.
That's what I was going to ask you, right? He's the
got a
messenger guy with the wings, right?
He's got a skateboard and a hovering skateboard. So I mean, he does kind of got like traveling feet in a sense.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because that is the Hermes
Real
messenger
quick.
guy with the wings, right?
Do you know how
hoverboard
much?
is, go ahead.
I was just gonna say because I love sneakers, and I have a lot of Nikes. Do you know how much
you
the
go.
Marty McFlys are?
No.
Well,
Dude, don't even fucking try to
like a few
get
grand.
a pair.
But isn't
Yeah.
Nike? Yeah, it's a good point because isn't Nike an ancient Greek god as well?
Yeah, that's why I bring it up because
There you
I
go.
also own the Forrest Gump running shoes.
You
I
mean
won't tell
Roger
you how much
Zemeckis' other film, Forrest Gump?
Right? I won't tell you how much I paid for them. But anyways, Nike is very important because we got like this whole Poseidon, Mars, Kronos, and he wears those Nikes throughout almost the entire movie, except for when he changes it over to the black Converse. But anyways, the Marty McFly Nikes are like a couple grand. They don't even make that style anymore. But anyways, go ahead.
One other thing that I had too, I mean, Marty McFly, you get the MM, that's very Masonic.
Yeah.
Have McFly, you already have like that fly in there. And this one could be a stretch, but I did find it interesting that in the movie, he does get, I think, aggravated maybe more than once being called a chicken. Nobody calls me a chicken.
Yeah, they call him Red too later, right? So that's another kind of Mars reference, right?
And Mercury's animal was a rooster. So maybe that's why they wrote chicken. Because no, I'm a rooster. I don't know.
So it sounds like they're covering like the whole basis of the planetary system here with one character.
Yeah, he's supposed to travel up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. He's gonna any male energy in the Kabbalistic tree is gonna be all him, and every female energy tree. That's probably why you have the girlfriend in the beginning. In order for him to, my opinion, in order for you to cross the abyss, you have to like kind of untangle the feminine energy. That's why he doesn't bang his girlfriend. Now on the other side, if he would have banged his mom, things, what I'm just saying, like now you have the total opposite. Like it's just
I like it. No, I like it. So the hero's journey, this travel through the Kabbalistic tree, this is all represented by traveling through these different planets of his character, right? He's representing Mercury one time. He's representing, what was the purple one again? Was that Pluto?
Well, purple
would go
Wonder. Saturn.
To Nick's point, Abraxas too. I was thinking Abraxas with the chicken thing.
So are these all the same things though? Like the
He's
hero's
crossing
journey,
the gate.
Yeah.
So the chicken
representing
and the
all these
rooster,
planetary travels.
Yeah, he's starting from position A, you could say, jumps in the DeLorean, then he ends up, he travels through time, but the Wikipedia was very specific to say not through space.
There you go.
Space is their
Goes
god,
right back to the same spot, right?
NASA Space Kabbalah right there. Neptune is
Well,
their
the
god.
1.21 gigawatts to charge it is 4. So think about, I don't know if,
I have something on
did
that.
Did you say 1.21 gigawatts?
1.21 gigawatts.
This sucker's electrical, but I need a nuclear reaction to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. 1.21 gigawatts! 1.21 gigawatts! Great Scott!
I definitely have something on that.
I love that part.
So before we get into the 1.21 gigawatts, what was this Abraxas and chicken business, Heidi?
Just when Nick
not up to
said
speed on
chicken,
that.
that's what first came to my mind was Abraxas.
So what's the connection there? I'm not familiar with Abraxas enough.
Because he doesn't want to be called chicken.
No. What is Abraxas though?
Jin, you want to go on Abraxas?
So Abraxas is a goetic spirit who's often associated with Saint Peter if you're looking at it through a more like left-hand path Catholicism lens, like how I used to. And so he's like a guardian of gates, you could say. He serves the same function in the Goetia as Saint Peter does in like the normative Catholicism, because they all have equivalents.
Is he the Colonel of Chicken?
Colonel, he's the chicken-headed snake god.
Right. He has like a body of a
there we go. I knew.
and then his feet are snakes.
There we go.
And he holds it in his sigil is like a key and like an A and some other things. But yeah, like Heidi's right.
Remember that left-hand path business. Remember what he just said about that, because later, that's going to be something I'm going to talk about later. So
it's the chicken-headed snake god eating itself, though, right? That's what we're talking about with the Abraxas.
Well,
not the Ouroboros.
It's not the Ouroboros.
Exactly. That's what I was getting confused with. I couldn't think of the names. I was getting them.
So think of him as Saint Peter. Just think of him in the positive polarity. So he's like the guardian of the gate. He's standing at Mercury. Marty has to go through. Where does he go through? He has to go through at Yesod. So he has to pass through the truth or the world. Someone said like the Dr. Brown was the sort of like the word. I think Nick said it. I was like, there's a gematria link to like the world or the truth with the guy.
Emmett, his name is everything. Emmett means everything.
Everything. So it's everything that we see. So it's that path between like he has to go from householder to like magician. So he's a chicken because he's a householder, meaning that he doesn't know what the outside world is like. But once he's a rooster, the Abraxas, he has to pass through that gate. It's like passing through the gate to adulthood. So he passes.
Look at his hair too.
Exactly.
It looks like a rooster. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a cock too, right? It's like a hard rocket passing through negative space.
I'm glad
I was going to say, it kind of seems like that's his attitude, right? When people are calling him chicken or people are calling him red, it seems like he's popping off like he's a cock, right? Kind of cocky about
it. Nick's already laughing. I'll shut up. Yes, to all of that.
Yeah.
So do we have any, Nick, did you have anything else on Marty McFly before we cruise over to Dr. Everything Von Braun?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm good. Yes.
So,
I think Julia had something about 1.21 gigawatts.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I figured we'd get into that since he's the 1.21 gigawatt guy, right?
Okay.
So that is how he fuels this time machine, is through this immense amount of power, and it's he needs this. I think they obviously created through this nuclear reaction with plutonium, but these are all elements of real science, kind of rooted in some science fiction aspects to it, right? And this 1.21 gigawatts is probably rooted in some occultism, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I don't know what anybody else got out of it, but I'll just give you kind of my very limited knowledge and what it means to me. Because before he says the thing about the gigawatts, he sends Einstein into the future, right? And when he gets back, it's 1:21 a.m.
Yeah.
And then he says 1.21 gigawatts. And this to me stood out because it's like, why did they 1:1, 1:1? Why do they keep using this 1:1? And I mean, I don't remember. Was JJ on the Gematria episode or not?
I'm glad I'm not the only one, Julia.
No. Okay. So me and Nick were talking about on the Gematria episode the significance of 4 and the significance of 8. And there are plenty of 8s in here, but the
88 miles per hour.
Right. The 1.21 is also the 4. So I feel like, and they're using that over and over again, 1.21 gigawatts, 1:21 a.m. And it's very specific to me that would be something they want to catch your attention. So what did you guys get out of that?
Before I say, I'm going to have Nick go because he's got the gematria. I think he might have some.
Yeah.
You know what the thing is? It pops up as if I was to go through my notes. Yeah. There was a lot of 8s. That is for sure. There was even a picture that I had that even shows an 8, like on one of the roads is like a route or something. It shows that with Marty frame.
Which one you got there, bud? We got Hill Street. Hill and Maine. Do you have control of this, or do I? You got it. Nice.
Right there.
I know, yeah.
Also,
and this is obviously very intentional because this is a set they all did this on, right? So this is not like
Yeah,
again,
this
once
is
again
a
to the
set.
intent
Nick,
of all this. Yeah.
add the numbers 395 too. Like it's
Oh,
gonna get you
17.
right back.
Yes, 17. I got 17.
It's 8. Yeah,
Oh.
and then it's 8.
Well,
You're not
so
wrong.
also just really quick, the clock tower has a lion on either side or
Save
a
the clock tower.
lioness. Yeah. And then he lives in Lion Estate, which is 2 lions.
Yeah.
And the lion is Leo, which is the 8th month of the year. So you're getting double 8s on the clock tower and double 8s on the estate that he lives in. So
Whoa,
just
because
like
that's because of the
88
Leo. Is that what you're saying? That turns
yeah,
into 80.
because
The
the
8th
lion is Leo, the 8th month.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, it's 88 on the clock tower and 88 on Lion Estates, and then 1.21 gigawatts and 121 AM is 4. And so if you added that, that's 8 again. But anyways, a lot of 8s, a lot of 4s, a lot of significance on time and numbers for sure.
The 4 for sure, because it's all of the elements together. And so
You're right.
Yeah, charging it with everything. And think of Emmett, what is he? He's everything. He's the universe. And he's the one that's always talking about this 4 because it makes sense because he's everything. So
I'm just going to show a
That's
picture of
great,
these lions
Heidi.
real
Good
fast.
Kabbalah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Look, these are some pretty interesting little. I mean, again, taking into note that this is all,
That's a Russian pin.
This is all very well designed, for a purpose here. This is strangely enough, I believe this is the same set they used for Gremlins the year prior or 2 years prior, maybe. As far as the downtown
That's
area goes.
badass. I love
Yeah.
Gremlins.
Yeah, if you watch Gremlins and you watch, Back to the Future, you'd be like, wait a second, I've seen this town square before. But no, these lines are very interesting because you see them like very prominently between him and Brown in the middle with the clock. I mean, it's a very scene that you recall. It gets very long lasting scene in your memory. I feel like
There is a clock at the beginning, the very opening scene, though, JJ, of that. A guy hanging off of the clock tower just like
Yeah.
that.
I was
so
searching
I
to
mean,
try to find an image of that. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it though and find that.
do it. It's in there. It's an opening scene. Opening
Yeah.
scene.
It's interesting, the arrows, like it's almost pointing onto like the paths that the magician should take. Like which way he should go.
Well,
Because like I know that like
I have some things that I want to say, but I don't want to say it yet because it'll wreck stuff because we're not there yet. But yes, absolutely. Or should I wreck it while we're looking for the picture? I don't know.
Nick, did you have anything else on that pen you were talking about?
Excuse me, on the what?
You were talking about a pen on your slides here?
Pin.
Somebody was wearing a pin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. My bad. Yeah. That was a pin that I mentioned before. You can't really see it too well, but it's a pin that goes back to some Russian stuff. Again, there's just when I get into it, it's just a lot of
rocket stuff.
Gematria. Yeah, let me pull up my notes.
Wouldn't that be weird if it's Russian rocket stuff? It connects both sides of the kind of
It was with like art gallery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, place of Marty wears a souvenir. It's a souvenir button from the Art and Revolution, Soviet art and design from 1917 to 1935.
Very Trotsky.
Exhibition that toured the UK in the late 1970s, early 80s, mostly known at Liverpool's Walker Art Gallery.
Well, that's a weird thing to incorporate in this film, don't you think?
Well, there's tons of like weird Russian.
So many Easter eggs.
Constantly.
Yeah.
That was very Red Dawn of them.
Okay, there you go. More
That's true.
more embedding in the communism era of the times, right? The anti-communism era. Anti-Ruskies.
One thing I can bring up, I have in front of me now.
Sure, knock it out, man.
It goes with the 17 and the 8.
Yeah, I say I'm on a roll with these numbers. Please keep going.
All right. Yeah. When Marty leaves the house, Use the address. It's 1646. That equals 17, and then you could turn that into 8 again. Then you also get, I don't know what made me think about it. That is a date. And I looked that up for like anything to go with Masonic stuff. And back in October 16th, 1646, going by the old calendar, which would be October 26th, 1646. Elias Ashmole, who's a Rosicrucian too, we've covered him on the Occult Rejects with Obsidian Mott, and he got initiated into Freemasonry. And that is the very moment Doc and Marty fire up the DeLorean. It's October 26th, 1985.
Interesting. It looks like Marty's address is 1646.
Yes. That's why, yeah, the first.
And his is 1640. So there's a lot. These things are deeply embedded in, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, in 1646, the St. John, there was a Masonic. Wait, hold on one second. There's one thing that I wanted to just mention. I think is interesting. Thomas Brown's. He has a book that comes out that coins in 1646 as well. Coins the word electricity. So the word electricity even comes out in 1646. And somebody else that I have mentioned multiple times, and I've said about like being able to move, spirits or demons through light and crystals. Athanasius Kircher in 1646 put out a book saying that he thinks that you can project moving images with light.
Okay. That's very interesting then, because that's really what we're talking about here is the magic through the moving images of light, huh?
Yeah.
And I should have clarified on my address, it's the real address of the real house. So 9303 Rosalind Avenue.
Because I think it does change.
I think that's just the actual real where they film.
I was just looking at that too, Heidi. You're right. There is they do have they made a fictional address for these buildings versus the real locations, even the numbers. Like, once again, to this
interesting because you would layer the
purpose, right?
JJ.
No, that's
two realities. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's a good way to look at it too. Go ahead, Jim.
Bringing the poles together. You're layering it. You're choosing a house that has a magic number to begin with. There's lots of houses that do. Then you're going to add in your metafictional. All magicians do this. They kind of create like a fake narrative, we could say. It's not that it's a lie. It's just that it's like a movie. It's like kind of fictional. So, but it's kind of real at the same time because there's it's a real underlying truth. Like, I'm really impressed by everybody. Let me just say, like, how good like Nick is, Heidi is, Julia is, you are, JJ. Like, I didn't know any of this coming into this. Like, I didn't really have that deep of a thought. But I have to say that the thing about Jupiter that Heidi keeps saying is really important, because there's a saying in Kabbalah that the spark, the mercurial element, the starting point of the prince is the heart of that Jupiter character or the Zeus character. It's the heart of Hesed. So it has to go through his journey in order to be expansive, like lightning, to travel through space. That's the whole thing. He has to become lightning. Then he reflects off the water like a mirror, and the lightning goes everywhere else and then can energize like everything else.
There's just so much lightning stuff here, right?
Oh, there's exactly what he said, and then I'm going to say something towards the end, and it's going to all come together exactly what he said. Like, that's how I interpreted it anyway. But I like everybody's stuff because it's all different, But it's a duality movie. Yeah, for sure.
That's a good way to look at it. There is a duality to all of it, right?
It's right there in Hill Valley. You're getting a duality.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's even another thing. November 5th is one of the dates in the movie, right?
November 5th, 1955 was an integral date. I think that's when we developed the flux capacitor, right?
That's Guy Fawkes Day too, right?
Oh yeah.
Hill Valley matches Guy Fawkes.
No shit.
Yes.
Well, and you mentioned Germany before, and Einstein's Freemason
Germany stuff, right?
The Freemason lodge that he was reportedly associated with is the Theodor de Neuhoff number 111 in Berlin, Germany. I thought that was weird.
Nice.
November 5th, 1955, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hill Valley, just to even throw in there too, which I thought was weird, because as I go along, like when we talk about things, I'll add the gematria as I follow it in my notes. You get a lot of twin stuff coming up. You even have Twin Pines, and all that stuff. It does match the twins in Twin Peaks, and 2 keys. I thought that was maybe interesting because I think I started getting. All right, just real quick, it was the next thing I have anyway. Mayor Goldie Wilson. I looked up Goldie Wilson. His name matches Twin Dragons, the secret key, and Wilson equals the Joker and the Dragon, and Valley equals like Marty, Jester, USSR, and Caduceus.
Heidi likes keys.
And the Caduceus too, for sure.
And you will get into Asclepius later on, which is the same thing, just minus one of the snakes.
Right.
Also, if you add 11 plus 5 plus 55 is 71. 7 plus 1, you get another 8.
Holy smokes.
11 times 11 is 121.
The 8s are really everywhere in this film. I mean, they went really hardcore on that, huh?
Code maxing. Yeah.
Sure.
Code maxing. I like that. I like the maxing terminology of the.
I'm trying to introduce you to
the zoomers. That's more of a zoomer term, I feel like.
Yeah, but if you're very online, like if you're a very
is that Kino? Is that a Kino term? What are we talking?
That's a Kino term. That's from the Zoomers, but it's Kino by millennial standards. It's cool.
Right. No, I like the term. It's kind of cracks me up, right? Like the whole idea of maxing, right? Go ahead, Nick. What were you saying?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I finally looked at that stuff with Jennifer, the gematria you asked me to talk about.
Yeah.
That equals in simple Venus, Horus, Masons, Square, Tower, the Fool. Her phone number is 555-4827. Now, I mean, I just kind of took out the 4823. I took out the 555 because that's like on everything. And the last 4 would equal 17. We could add to 8 again.
Damn.
No shit.
And he lives in Lion Estates, and in simple, that equals twin. And Lion in Hebrew equals Russian.
Well, and they're the twin pillars, don't you think?
Yeah, and then we're back to the duality here too, right? We got the different versions of the mall during different times, right? With the note of like you were saying, Julia, with the 9/11 predictive programming aspects to it. You also have the single tower now too, right?
Well, I was gonna say, I think this would be a good time if you could, JJ, to play my clip. If not, I can maybe text it to Nick and see if he can get it pulled up on his. But I did email it to you.
Well, let's I will work on that here. Let's start talking about some other thoughts here on the mall while I get that clip up here for us, please.
I mean, the twin turns to the lone because he's finished the journey. He's coming out. He's not going in. So it's completion type.
Right.
Is it 1:34 a.m. 8 as well?
It's both 8. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Okay.
But you should never reduce. You should really never reduce a prime number. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's not like that. You're right. It's 8, but it should be 17. But Heidi's right because it's showing a different path on the tree. So it's the 1 plus the 34. 34 is the number of apotheosis. So you've gone through the whole tree, and then you've, exactly like Heidi said, you've come back into the kingdom. But the Twin Pines Mall, you've split off. You are the hero and the dragon. You are the beast and the hero, both. And then you've just gone up straight to Tiferet. So you have to the sun, which is again to your point about the lions, Julia. Like that's what the symbol is. Leo is the sun. So that's why you see that there. So it's like that's also the beast. That's why it's a noble animal, but it's also a beast.
And also the son, it is the son doing the journey for the father because he takes his place and kicks him out of his place where he should be because he's the one that gets hit by the car. So therefore, once again,
can we just say the fact that George McFly was a peeping creeping Tom?
Yeah.
That was weird.
So weird.
But it's sex magic again.
You said the peeping Tom stuff. Yeah, that's all of it gets super creepy. Really, when you start considering all of those aspects, it's dark.
It is weird.
So you're saying there's some sex magic aspects embedded in the numerology of that, huh?
There's some like actual like outward ones at the end too. And with George McFly, I dare say when we get to him, it'll make a lot more sense. I'm gonna hold on to it so I don't mess you guys up because we're gonna play the clip. And
I don't know if Nick said this, but maybe he is the fool
Nick,
archetype.
we're gonna have to take a moment on that clip because I couldn't quite download it, but I did
Okay.
forward it to Nick in case he can handle it. It's
Well,
my
Nick-
connection sucks at the moment and the file was too big. Sorry about
Oh,
that, Julie. I
Nick,
just couldn't
can I text
download
it to you or?
I got it right now.
Oh,
Downloaded.
perfect. If you're able to play it, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I might be able to
'Cause
convert on my end too.
It wouldn't let me share it all on my end.
I can say
just
one
large
thing
file.
why we're going and talking about this about
Oh,
George,
yeah.
if you guys want.
Yeah.
So
Jordan,
I truly
are we done
believe
with
that.
everything Von Braun here? Is that what you're telling me?
I think. Well, yeah, I think.
Okay. On
For
to
The
now.
whole
George McFly.
film.
I like
That's
it.
just the whole film is you can consider like a Von Braun Parsons
Yes.
love letter.
I think
Yes.
so. Yeah, I think so.
Even this image that
Absolutely.
you pulled up is so holistic. Exactly like what Nick said. Most people don't pick up the purple density of Binah. Most people don't. They'll associate black,
Yeah.
like deep black, but there's actually a flashing blue and a purple there.
It's all dark purple. That band Deep Purple is basically Saturn.
That's right. That's 100% right what Nick said. That's more deep knowledge. Like most people wouldn't say that. They would say black or whatever. So that's what I'm saying, like a little more you'd have to have a little more magic knowledge maybe to like pick that specific thing rather than just pick, like if you're picking from a book, you're going to pick black because that's what the books would tell you. But if you're picking from experience, you'd pick purple with the flashing gold and the lightning in between because that's like the luminosity.
Do you think that it's significant the mayor's name is Goldie whatever,
Wilson.
Goldie
Wilson.
Wilson, yeah, Goldie Wilson. Like, because you mentioned the J.C. Penney and like the other stuff, and then like the mayor's name is Goldie.
That's interesting. Could be.
Also
what Nick
inspired
said.
by Marty, because Marty says, "Oh, you should run for mayor." So it's like he impacted that outcome as well.
His will.
You get a very Forrest
projected
Gump
outward.
experience, before Zemeckis' Forrest Gump. I mean, Marty McFly did a lot of Forrest Gump.
Yeah,
stuff
he
here in
was.
this Zemeckis
Yeah, he
film.
was.
What were you saying, Jen? I apologize. I stepped on you. What were
Oh
you saying?
no, that's okay. I just think that that was a really interesting point Julia made, like about the mayor, and then Nick said like a bunch of amazing points about the mayor's name, like the double keys. That's very St. Peter. Like we were talking about Abraxas. Part of his sigil is a key. St. Peter holds the double keys, but there's actually more than 2 keys to get into the gate of heaven in a more esoteric reading. So that's really interesting, right? And so yeah, maybe he's the grand master of the town. He's like the grand master mason of their little lodge in the middle of wherever they are. So that's what I would see him as. He's the Tiferatic in nature. He's a 33. Even has like one of his billboards had magic numbers. I don't remember what it was. I'm sure Nick wrote it in his notes. But that's like immediately what I thought. Like Goldie Wilson, Tiferatic, like, okay, he's gonna be the boss, but he was projected outward. So it was like I consider this film like very plus ultra. Like it's very like magicians wrote it. Magicians kind of inserted their little little tricks and interesting little points, Easter eggs, as Heidi called them. That's a perfect way to describe it. So they inserted it in, and they're like, "Oh, how deep? How many layers can you go?" Because interestingly, this is considered a perfect film. Like, there's no technical errors. The editing's considered like really clean, really good, right? So it's a perfect hermeneutic to carry the magician's Easter eggs, seeds, forward into the future. Because what travels through space and time but flashing light and moving images?
No, for sure. I finally got your video queued up here, Julia. I was able to finally download it here. My connection got better here, but
I couldn't. Yeah, I was converting it. I couldn't get it to.
No, I couldn't get. I'm gonna have to share it from a different app. But do we have any more commentary here on some of this George McFly before we jump into that?
Oh, George, yeah, I have lots on George, but I can wait until
Yeah. No, we got him up right now.
Okay.
Well,
I just think that George, there's a couple things that were Easter eggs that I found. And that's that he mentioned that he was a left-handed person, but he's writing right-handed for most of it. And they used to push this on
yeah.
people because it was very seen as negative. And I dare say this whole thing is about how George's life is going to be changed if he continues on right hand path or the left hand path, right? And they're forcing him to be on the right hand path, but we don't really know if that's what he would decide. And so we also have his name means earth worker or farmer, and or it means works with the dirt, which we get back to Adam. Adam means ready. We get into the whole Adam, Mason type stuff there when we're talking about creation. So where George is concerned, I think it's pretty interesting that eventually when he's had enough of enough and he punches the guy, he does it with his left hand, even though he's been using his right hand the whole time. And
That's the
so it's
left-handed
kind
path, is
of
what you're saying.
yeah, and then what happens is he goes home, and also we have to remember the lightning path is a direct ascension, and it's fast and it works, but also it's not always the best way. It's very magical. It's very left-hand path to choose lightning. And you go back and his life is completely not hard anymore. He's got all the comforts, which would be very Luciferian, very left-hand pathy. Like, okay, it's much better now. Now he's bossing people around. Now he's the boss of his own universe. And he's chosen that one thing changed everything for George, that punch.
Sure.
So
that's him going on the left-handed path, huh?
That's how I felt about it.
Interesting.
No, that was an incredible point, I have to say. Like, honestly, I didn't catch that at all, but it's like, sounds so obvious when Heidi's saying it. I'm like, oh, fuck, why didn't I
I had help with the punch, but the thoughts were mine on the rest.
I think the folks of the chat and the interwebs here agree with you, Heidi. That's an excellent point.
Thank you. I think that's all, and so when we think about Marty, why is he the one going through this path, right? Because he took the dad's place. We're back to Isis. What happens with Horus is the son is the father and the father is the son. The son is the recreation of the father. So he takes over the journey to fix it for him because he's too much of a goofball really to do this, right? Like he's just not doing it correctly. So the son is fixing it all the way. And then he ultimately gets the choice with the hit. And he chooses which way he goes there. And then his whole life is completely changed after that. So
that's fascinating way to look at that.
And he's able to reconcile sort of the changes in his life. So he's like the true hermetic character of the movie.
Yes. And they're one and the same because, the son is the father for a brief time until he returns to reality, which is why it's not reality because it's he's fixing past. So that's
what's the show on in the background here? It's a good question from Donald Ferguson. It's Ralph Cramden, right? And the Honeymooners, right?
Is it? I can't even tell.
Doesn't Ralph Cramden always want to send his wife to the moon?
Yeah.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
He's always threatening to send his wife to the moon. I mean, it's a little domestic violence, but I mean, he's always threatening to send his wife to the moon by hitting her.
Oh, that's funny.
Right?
Heidi said a really great point about how he's rectifying the past. She didn't use that exact phrase, but that's exactly what we're all speaking the same language. So that's what she's talking about. You're bringing both hands into synthesis. You're fixing the sins of the father. Yes, it is in the dream of the magician, dream of the person traveling. We're saying Marty. So it's like in his dream, but even in that dream, he is those people. That's not grammatically correct. That sounds weird too, but I'm sorry. But
no, that's a good. Yes. No, I appreciate it. That's a good point there. I was just one caveat on the show. So that was the show later when he goes back in 1955. The one there with George McFly we see in the background, him watching in 1985, is Science Fiction Theater, which was a show from 1955. It was his favorite show apparently as a child or whatever there. or young as a teenager. So it's a little, it's a little interesting, right? The show in the background is science fiction theater, and then again they're doing some, back more space stuff, right? More space stuff.
Space. Yep.
Not that Mormon-y though.
No, Masony. Masons and occulty today.
So, do we have anything else here on Mr. McFly? And before we kind of go over some of the esoteric aspects and the occult aspects of the journey that they go on here?
No, but I have a funny little piece because I love JFK so much. When he goes back to the Ronald Reagan thing and he blows Doc's mind and he's like, "Well, who's the president then?" And he's like, "Ronald Reagan." And he says, "Why? You have got an actor? Like, does he need to look good on TV?" That's a hat tip to JFK. Because JFK one time got on a speech. Yeah, and he was like, "I'm just gonna win because I look good."
Well, that's interesting because I have that clip right here, Heidi.
Doc, you gotta believe me.
Then tell me, future boy, who's president of the United States in 1985?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
Doc, you gotta believe me.
Then tell me.
I think that also ties into the Donald Trump aspects that we see that introduced in Back to the Future 2, and kind of that kind of predictive nature, as I was referring to, of where do these ideas come from. But that is an interesting aspect of JFK too, or perspective.
Did you notice when Marty gets to 1955, he's walking through Town Square, the movie that's on at the movies is a Ronald Reagan?
No
movie?
shit. No.
Well,
shit.
I know
did
what
not
one it
notice
is
that.
when they get back.
Yeah. It's up on the the first thing. Yeah, what you just said, Julie.
It kind of
Up on the
almost
movie theater.
zooms in on it. Yeah, it says Ronald Reagan,
Interesting.
and it has the.
That's awesome.
It's a meta movie before the meta movie. I never really thought about it like that because this never really gets considered to be like a meta film. The first meta film was Thesis, which is a Spanish film from like 1995. So we're talking about like pretty late, like past this film. But this film really actually has it all. It's really telling you, it's like everything's a nod and a wink to the outside reality, to the outside world. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's a good point, good jumping off point for the video that Julia wants to share with us here, which I've kind of keyed it down here. It's an 8-minute video. I apologize, Julia, but I've kind of keyed it down to these aspects of what we're just talking about there, and the Twin Pines Mall, the 9/11 predictive programming. I am familiar with this clip. Is this True Stream Media? Is that who originated this clip?
So Colby found it and he talked about it on his podcast, which is where this clip is from. If we can't play the whole thing, that's fine because I can sum it all up. However much we watch, if we don't get to the rest of it, I can sum it up. But the video that is in this clip is no longer available. It got removed. You can't find it on YouTube. You can't find it anywhere. So that's why I had to get the clip from his podcast episode because you can't even go find the actual clip itself. So it's one of those things. It's like
I think I seen it a long time ago. I think it was. I didn't realize it had been memory hold with the way Houdini here because I think it was True Stream Media that made that originally.
Yeah, they've removed it from everywhere.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think there's some great points brought up in here with even additional layering of this whole, 9/11 Twin Towers business, right? Again, it's I don't know if that's True Stream Media, the name of that one. Well, I don't remember all these names, too many names, but yeah, I have come across this clip. It is interesting they would memory hole it there, right? Because it's almost like it provides validity to the fact that there's something way deeper going on here, huh?
Yeah.
Do we have anything other commentary there before we start the clip? I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, and I think shit, I already moved my notes. Yeah, there was something I was going to say about George McFly about the stuff that.
Yeah. Please do.
Sorry, George McFly. Again, when you get, I've already mentioned Dragon and Keys. His name equals 3 keys and wood dragon, and George does equal magician, pineal rose, and Saturnalia. Yeah,
it's a pretty debaucherous festival, right? Saturnalia.
Yeah, and his Lorraine, his mother's name equals Kronos.
And there's the what's is there any reference to the cross of Lorraine with the use of the name Lorraine?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, because if to go with what Heidi had pointed out, like it can be also translated as the Queen. So Lorraine is also a region in France. So all of like people with that name that would have originated in that region of France. So yeah, it's like a very Templar, Rosicrucian, very like it's a very magician's nod to something. Like wink, wink.
Yeah.
Like look over here.
Well, and to your point, Nick, to the pineal, the twin pines. I mean, we've got pines, pine cones, pineal.
Yeah.
So that's all going to be present.
Pineal symbol. Yeah.
Yeah, with the twin pines, that's very much a nod to that, huh? With the pine cones.
I was gonna say that. Pine cone.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll get started here on this journey on this video. Oh, maybe. Got to get some sound going for us here. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think the sound is coming through.
Is the sound not coming through?
Nope.
Nope. Shoot. I was afraid of that. Well,
can you walk through it with your analysis while we watch the visual, Julia?
Yeah, Julia, do you mind telling us what's going on here?
Uh-oh, is she muted?
You're
sorry. I can definitely do that.
Okay.
If you back it up to the beginning, we can speed through the whole 8-minute thing in like 2 seconds because I can break it down for you myself. But yeah, take it all the way back and I'll tell you when to fast forward it or whatever. So this guy is basically talking about how Back to the Future is predicting the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and he starts with this letter because in the background here, if you can see as he's writing this letter to Doc Brown, there's a sign in the back with the big 9 on it.
Oh,
and
it's that same intersection with was that an 8? Was that 8 and 3? The same one we saw before on Nick's slides?
I thought I was the shit putting the shit in my notes.
Well, this right here, he's saying like Twin Pines, and actually the terrorist attack with the Twin Pines. And if you flip the time upside down, it's 9/11. And so we got 9/11 at Twin Pines Mall with the terrorist attack. And then the pines are representing the towers, whatever. And then at the end of the movie, it's lone pine representing the single, what do they call it? The One World Tower, whatever.
Tower, maybe something like that. One World Trade Center.
And then again, Doc Brown on his clock, he sends Einie into the future at 1:19. That's another 9/11. But in the second Back to the Future, they got the Twin Pines on the TV and they changed the channel and it immediately becomes a visual of the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Right there. So it's like they're Twin Pines, just like in the first one. Then it goes to the Twin Towers. This is supposed to be in 2015, right? Into the future. And he's showing the 9/11 thing again, the terrorist attack.
The Libyans.
And he talks about how this guy right here, I think it's George McFly, he's hanging upside down, right? Oh, and the Statue of Liberty torch, which also is like the New York reference with the Twin Towers there. But is it George McFly in the second one that's hanging upside down in this scene? I can't remember.
Yeah,
or is it Marty?
It's George, but it's not Crispin Glover. It is George, the character George McFly.
Right. So if you look at it from his perspective, basically, with him hanging upside down, he'll flip it and it'll show like this is a projection of the towers falling in Back to the Future
Oh.
2.
Oh, yeah.
But if you
The Tarot Hangman, is that what
actually
you said?
Mm-hmm. It's very
Interesting.
Geberotic.
but if you speed it up just a little bit, because we already
Yep.
talked about this part. Twin Towers, 9/11, hanging upside down. We talked about all that.
You know, the Libyans were the pharaohs, like military.
I did not know that.
Yes, yeah. And in this this bit, I just saw, since we're waiting for it to fast forward.
Go ahead, yeah.
They do specify it's an AK-47, and they said damn Russian guns or some shit like that. Because I do have tons of stuff to Russia, so I'm even trying to show that with this part too.
So in this part, he's talking about how it says tower strike on the newspaper, tower struck, like Twin Towers, tower struck. And how in this scene it cuts it off, but it goes 9/11 with the fire, 9/11.
Yeah.
And then in the
All-seeing
background
eye.
is the all-seeing eye that is looking at them. And so Robert Zemeckis, this is the date when they go back into the future, right? October 21st, 2015. So Robert Zemeckis would later go on to direct a film called The Wire, October 21st, 2015, about a guy stringing a wire between the Twin Towers and walking across it. So he's literally referencing the date of the movie he's going to make in 2015. So from 1985 Back to the Future, 2015, when he comes out with The Wire, on the day that he put in Back to the Future 2, is another movie about the World Trade Center.
Which is wild because they made a documentary when that dude did that at the time in the late 70s, right after they built the trade centers. He made a documentary about it, I believe.
Right. And so like in Back to the Future, they're like, what's with the wire? What's with the wire? Talking about the wire from the clock tower to the DeLorean. And then Robert Zemeckis goes on to make a movie called The Wire about a guy stringing a wire between the Twin Towers and walking across it, right? The Walk, it's called. And the craziest part about it is actually the way that he dresses the character in The Walk is the last outfit Marty McFly has on right here. It'll show it.
Yeah.
So Marty McFly has on the black leather jacket, the red shirt, and I don't know, I guess like some kind of blue jeans or something. Literally, that's the exact outfit that he puts on the guy in The Walk, Twin Towers.
That's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, ma'am. That's JGL. What are you talking about, that guy?
I never really liked him after 10 Things I Hate About You.
Well, he's definitely an Ancient Alien Cargo Cult, guy. Third Rock from the Sun. He plays in the Batman films.
But yeah, so I mean, it's literally kind of like this weird Twin Towers predictive programming thing between the first two Back to the Future movies and then a movie he literally directed exactly 30 years later to the date in Back to the Future 2, October 21st, 2015. He releases another movie about the Twin Towers. So
that's
I mean, it
super
just
wild.
makes you wonder how much of this is purposeful,
And it also kind of makes me wonder where does ideas come from and how does time work? Because how does that get planned to do all those things?
Like, how did he know in 1985 to talk about October 21st, 2015 about a movie he hadn't even made yet?
And how does he know that some Looney Tune French fellow is going to go do a trapeze act on top of the Twin Towers back in 78? You know what I mean? You can't plan these things, I feel like.
Well, maybe he can. Maybe that's an interesting way to think about it.
I'm open to it. I'm open to it.
Maybe
Howard
he's got,
Hughes.
Maybe he's got a Doc Brown of his own somewhere.
Right.
Maybe that's what it is. Because like one of the masteries of time is the knowledge of your own astrological chart. So that's demarcations of time in space, right? Like very practical demarcations of time and space. So but there's also the idea of the magician who's going to like plan in the future, like be very, what we call chronopoetic, where we put like the seed, like he plants a seed in the film, and then he's like, I'm going to see this work to completion. Because like I've never even heard of that movie with like Gordon Levitt or whatever his name is. Like I've never heard of it, I've never seen it, and I like a lot of Kino. So I'm not saying that I know all the films, but I'm just saying that it's like it seems very forgettable. So I'm just saying that yeah, maybe he manifested it, but like, what was it? It's just like some film
Right.
about the wire, right? Like he can do the great work, but what is he really like bringing forth into reality?
Well, I'm
So
glad
when
you
we're
said
talking
that.
about
Great work.
Von Braun and space and all that too, and time travel, I mean, I'm just saying, like that gets weird.
I'm glad you said.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said manifesting also on top of the Von Braun stuff, which I think is just very fascinating. That is, that this is all embedded with that again, the whole Parsons relationship, right? But with regard to the reality and time and whatnot, like, well, where are these ideas coming from? Or is somebody are they manifesting some of these ideas through some sort of external source that's communicating these to them? A plan or even the ideas generally through these
Well, they
rituals,
worship
right?
the space stick, right? As we call it.
The space stick, right?
Yes, they
Right.
do.
Right, it's very like
the
Neptunian,
chaos.
like exactly like what Heidi's been saying the whole time. It's like it's the sleeping god, and he's has to be erect to travel through space. So the rocket is like the perfect vehicle, very Heckalot, right? To travel through space and to penetrate your mother because the Sephira actually are feminine in quality. It's kind of an interesting way to think about it too. It's like very
Sure.
exactly what Marty is doing in the whole film. It's like, is he going to? Because it comes pretty close. It's like it gets very weird. So
You're the keynote king, Jen. I like
see
I like
that.
where your
I
head's at
love
on
it.
that one.
Meh.
So,
Well,
do we have any notes here on this the odometer, huh, Nick? Because it all seems to be rooted in eights again, huh?
Oh yeah. I pulled that up. Yeah. Oh, you have it up on the screen? Oh, sorry, I was looking at the notes. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Like when they're because we were talking about like the mall and the Libyans. It made me think about the odometer when he went to go jump, and he, there you go again. You have the 8 on there. You have 3306. I do find it interesting if you leave it up though. It does change as he's driving. Somehow it goes backwards. The bottom.
Interesting.
And
what do you
then
mean?
well,
The mileage goes backwards, huh? Yeah. Wow. That is interesting.
Is that even a nod to time travel? I don't know. 33, and then it goes
Yeah.
back to 3306, and you can see the 27 right there also. And then there's a 08.
Is this after or before on the
That's
change?
before he jumps. That's before he jumps.
So he goes back. Okay. And then
Yeah.
he fixes everything if you look backward on that. If you add the numbers on the other picture with the odometer, it goes back to a 1 on the bottom. Just back to what I was saying on the completion, but
Yeah.
it's on that other odometer on the changed one when they fix it.
When he hits, when he crosses over, you remember how like he hits a scarecrow on that guy's property?
The cornfield?
Yeah. Scarecrow equals Asclepius. And Francis Bacon, Masonry, and the letters 9/11 and April 8th. April 8th is also the first writing of the Book of the Law. The speed when hitting the scarecrow, you'll see on the screen is like let me see if I can move.
Yeah, if you don't have that, I can bring it up, but
Right there. He hits it at 77.
Ooh.
77 is Caduceus, Valley, Jester, USSR, Silly.
Damn, Nick. I wasn't
Interesting.
expecting you to hit me with that one.
And then
Pretty wild.
when he's leaving, you'll hear at some point in the movie, Doc says he was at Mr. Peabody's house. And Doc does say at some point, he's like, that guy was supposed to be building a pine farm. I wonder why he never did.
Old man Peabody, yep.
Yes, and as he's leaving Peabody's yard, you hear him yell, "You killed my pines."
Yep.
Well, there you go. That's why he never got built, because Marty ran it over.
Interesting.
I think that's also why it goes from Twin Pines to Lone Pine, because Marty runs over just the one, and then there's only one left standing.
Well, and he also fixes his dad's life and then completes the wholeness of the whole thing. So it changes to 1.
Right,
like
because
on
he was
his
a
way
loser
back.
and becomes a successful author who's kind of a winner there when he comes back, right? After all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like you picked up on all the rotary signs, and this is when you go into a town. I'd always tell folks in the interwebs, you know, if you go to a town, you see all these signs when you pull into a town. That's who runs that town. You know, this is who runs Hill Valley, right? The Kiwanis, the Rotary, the Lions.
I'm surprised that the Masons aren't on there because all of the town signs in Oklahoma have the Masons on them.
What is it not on there for
Well, they
Italian
are on
reasons?
there.
You know what I mean?
They basically are on there with all of those.
Yeah, they are the Lions Club and the Rotary Club.
I
Oh,
guess I
it's
was
like, it's
looking
almost
for
like the
the
thing you're not
old,
talking about, right? The Masons is the
the
one
old
you're not talking
compass
about. Here.
one. The compass one.
What if the person, to draw off to what Julia's saying, what if the person making the film is a Mason?
That's
So
what
they
I'm.
don't
That's what I'm
need-
saying. That's
I
why they
looked.
left it out. That's the one. That's the
They
elephant in the
don't-
room. We will.
They don't need to put they don't need to put the sigil on the thing because they're wearing it.
Well, they also don't want to flag their own
Ooh.
business necessarily, too. So symbolic, so overtly, right? And it's kind of to me, it almost seems like a nod to like, hey, the Masons aren't involved. They're trying a trickster nod, right? Because they're not including the sign on the Hill Valley sign, right? The symbol, the logo.
And real quick, I could actually connect all these to Freemasonry.
Oh, there you go.
Gustav Lohr, I'm probably saying it wrong, was one of the Rotary Club's 4 founders. He was a Mason. The National Grange founder, Oliver Kelly, was a Mason and used those ties to recruit farmers after the Civil War. Daniel Carter Beard, Boy Scout pioneer who helped launch Campfire Girls, was a Mason as well. The Grange borrowed an explicit harvest degree system from Masonic ritual handbooks. Future Farmers of America built its opening and closing ceremony on the same officer poll format used in Masonic lodges. The American Legion has a short initiatory rites. 1990s fraternal survey noted some posts whose memberships were entirely Masonic. So, like, what that's getting at is basically some American Legion places were only like Masons, basically, that were members. Many small Kiwanis or Optimist clubs rent local Masonic halls to do things. The civic Freemasonry's 19th century stress on philanthropy and networking inspired the progressive era in servicing clubs, which was the Kiwanis, the Optimist, and the Rotary. The Kiwanis International sometimes uses Masonic lodges. The Rotary International will sometimes use Masonic lodges, and one of the founders, Gus Lohr, was a Mason in Nazi Germany. And the American Legion, again, also has initiatorial things for that. The Grange, the agricultural degree. The Optimist International will also rent out Masonic places to do their things at. So they're all either like somehow one of the founders was involved, they're renting that space, or they're actually including some of their initiatory stuff into their crap. Every single one of them. I didn't cover the JCs.
There.
I actually forgot that was there. Yeah. But the
You
JCs,
said you didn't cover the JCs?
I didn't throw the JCs in there, but I mean, that's who the fuck was in the JCs? That clown killer.
John Wayne Gacy was in the JCs.
That's enough. Yeah. There's something weird with that.
He was National JC of the Year, wasn't he? That's why he got photographed with Rosalind Carter, I believe.
Yes, he was. That was in Program to Kill, actually.
There you go.
Dave McGowan wrote about that. There was a comment. It was McGowan. There was a comment that popped up. I don't remember. I think the username was OakTree69. If
I see this one right here.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if they noticed this because they say Twin Pines, Lone Pine, upside down V and W. And the terrorists were in a VW bug van or whatever they call them. A Volkswagen hippie van,
Yep,
which
that's
I
right.
thought was an interesting selection. And you
VW
actually
bus.
see, yeah, and you actually see that same van at the end of the movie when they're blasting off where we're going. We don't need roads. That same van is parked on the street in front of the McFly's household. So
That's
I
very
thought that was interesting too.
Here's a great. That is very interesting. Here's a great comment about Darth Vader making that scene in there, right when he does the alien, invasion into his father's bedroom there in 1955,
Right.
wearing his
There's also
plutonium nuclear suit.
He mixes it with Star Trek too.
Yeah, But it goes back again to all these, rockets, the NASA, the Von Braun, the ancient alien cargo cult stories, of the, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away with Star Wars, right? Couldn't get any more ancient alien than that. That's awesome stuff, though. I appreciate the comments on those things as well. Nick, did you have any more points here on these slides? No, go ahead, Jen.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just want to say that Julia made a really good comment, and I also noticed that comment that you pulled up, JJ, because the whole film is very plus ultra. Even Hill Valley, it's like two poles of a magnet with a bridge between. Then you have the valley, the point of the star coming down, very Eastern star, right? Dropping into manifestation. That's 17, the 17th path of Kabbalah, Venus into Yesod. It's coming into formation. So you're drawing like the Venus down, the wealth, all of the magic that is light, really, and you're drawing it in. So something really interesting about like what everybody's saying and just like the kind of meta narrative of the whole film, because you could also say that they're kind of telling you that, we use plutonium. This is our cover story. But then when he goes back in the past, he has to use lightning. So they're saying you can actually recreate it totally on your own through lightning. Because like what Heidi said, it's all a dream, right? So the plutonium was just the trial in that time and space. But once they moved through time into a different space, they used a different method. I don't know. There's something really metaphysically interesting now that we're all talking about this, because I honestly did not catch all of this that I'm saying. So don't like it. This is just like free range, me just totally riffing.
No, that's fantastic, Jen. I mean,
stuff.
No, that's great. I mean, that's why we have these conversations, right? You know what I mean? Generate our own ideas too, right?
Yeah, to the two pines splitting apart because they go on the journey together to try and fix the dad's life. Like I've said, it's linear the whole time. And then as he returns, he's the only one returning to the one, back to one. Same with the speedometer going back, it went to one when you added them. So I think, I mean, for me, it's a hero's journey, all of this, Greek stuff. But I mean, I see every other point too. So.
Yeah, he's like doing I'll make a Mormon joke, Heidi, for you. He's the Joseph Smith of the journey,
yes,
right?
He
travels through the ark. That's what the DeLorean is. It's his ark, right? He has to he puts in the plutonium. Like you said, Pluto is kind of like the dead father, the corpse of the father, maybe you could say. And so they spent it. So they spend his seed and then they wind up with nothing. So he kind of like burns out the ark and then he has to go get his friend who's the god of infinite giving, Jupiter, Zeus, and he has to rectify it with lightning.
Yes, exactly. And then they win against Kronos in time. And then at the end, when they come back, well, I don't know if you want me to tell this now or.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, we can, if we want to wrap up the storyline before we get into the actual, time traveling device here, the DeLorean. Before we, I'm going to close up some stuff around the DeLorean subject. But if you want to finish up any of the occult stuff we see in the narrative, that's great.
So when they re-enter, when he comes back through, you'll see him come in, and the scene she showed with the fire makes a Pisces sign as they're coming through. And then on top of it, up in the cinema area, you'll see green lights and it's glowing. So, with the green and the heart chakra re-entrance. And then on the town theater, when they come back, you'll see the movie has changed to an American orgy. It's a sex film. So sex magic. And then to the other side of it, it has Jesus saves signs and all these salvation signs. So there was his choice to go either right hand path, left hand path, sex magic. Are you going to be the magician of your own life and creation, or are you going to, put your faith in something else? And then it's surrounding the hole that he comes.
That's
like
fascinating.
It makes the hole in the wall. Yeah. So that's what I saw.
I didn't catch the movie title with that. That is very much a reference to such things as sex magic, which is interesting. So back to Forey Ackerman real quick. You just spawned a thought of mine. Forey Ackerman was a literary agent for Ed Wood. He was the pioneer of exploitation films, which was largely
wow.
Yeah. So he there you go
Like
with
the
these
one from
these.
the one from the Johnny Depp movie.
That's the precise same
Wood?
one. And again, Depp's deeply involved in the neo process, and the process is who popularized exploitation films in the 70s, such as Process Church member John Waters, Hollywood director.
Isn't it crazy how it's like literally every time with each new episode, I learn a plethora of fucking information.
That's why I listen. I'm not
swear.
gonna lie to you. I listen to all of Occult Rejects when we get together because I know things when we're talking, but I'm like I always pick up other things I didn't know when I re-listen to it too. Yeah.
I just want to
and
say this
Biff.
image you selected. Sorry, Heidi,
appreciate-
I'll
I
let you
appreciate
go.
it for
Oh, you're
Real fast.
good.
It's very Kabbalistic. So I'll just say that.
Yeah. What
and
are your
I'll
all? Now that we're
shade it.
talking about that scene, what are your thoughts on the hobo here? Go ahead, Jen.
No, it's just a super Kabbalistic image and it actually fits really well with our discussions on Mormon magic because it really is like a very good Netzach color. But then there's also a quality of green that can be hoed. This is where a lot of people get confused because there's like a blue-green quality also there. So it can either be described as like emerald with light passing through, but then it can also be described as blue-green like turquoise, but that's really the reflection of Hesed. That's how it's described. So it's interesting because that's kind of the hermetic journey of the whole film, right? So this kind of in one image, it kind of relays a hero's journey. Like, does he go through the mother, the diamond, into the splendors of light, or does he travel through the fire into the path of the Father?
Mm-hmm. And
Interesting.
the
So you're
green.
saying he's kind of a messenger then? Because I was thinking this guy's kind of the messenger between all these worlds. He's always running into this dude, right?
Cap.
Yep. Yep. And then by the cinema, it's a clearer green instead of a turquoise green. It's more of a brighter green where you can see the American orgy sign and the Jesus saves and all that signs. And also we've got Biff before we leave him out, like Hiram a Biff. Well, then
I was going to close out with Biff once we're done with the storyline here, Heidi, because he ties into the stuff with the DeLorean when we talk the DeLorean stuff as well.
yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And that the brother, when you look at the photo, when they're looking at the picture of them disappearing, the brother's wearing a Disney Mickey Mouse shirt. I just had to say that since we've been talking about
I
Mom
noticed
Gone.
that too. Yeah.
Well, there's the right?
Yep.
Mickey Mouse, Marty McFly.
And that's all I have. I'll be quiet now. Sorry, I nerded out on this.
That's
Sorry,
so
that's your
That's
fault,
great.
JJ.
That's great. No, I like it. Do we have any other closing commentary on the journey that he took before we start closing out with Biff Tannen and the DeLorean?
Oh, DeLorean. I have some stuff I could talk about real quick.
Yeah, well, let's do the DeLorean and we'll roll it into Biff Tannen. How's that sound?
Yeah.
And we'll call it in here after that.
All right.
What are your thoughts on DeLorean, Nick?
Oh, the DeLorean. Well, I mean, it's more like silver, so I kind of put that more as Mercury-like, kind of like Quicksilver.
Right.
Symbolic of the albedo stage in alchemy. It's powered by like Heidi had even mentioned before, the plutonium Pluto, god of the underworld.
And then what was the Y situation with the flux capacitor? What was the significance there again?
That to me, I mean, it is the shape of the rising beast. And when you're doing the LVX formula. And
interesting.
when you're doing a ritual, there's certain things that you make a Y. And it's supposed to be.
So it's a ritual schedule of some regard, is what you're saying to me.
Yeah, it's something that you will make when you're doing a ritual.
Yeah.
Then I have it needs 1.21 gigawatts. I just found that interesting with 11 times 11. It does get that. Very Janus-like, or double poles, or twin pines, I guess, again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, stainless steel body, kind of even that look, purifying Mercury stage, reflects reality, a mirror or a portal. Maybe going too far, but even with the wings opening up, it's very like a scarab-like, or
as far as the gold wing style, I mean, that's a very unique, even and to all automobiles, that's not a very common feature, right? So what do you think the nature of that is as far as occultism goes?
I have like Horus's rings, the Egyptian, like the solar disc, scarab-like kind of resurrection. I mean, that's
what
even
about fallen angel? Even fallen angel type,
Yeah, that would coming back. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, totally. The plutonium core, again, Pluto. Want to give the descendants of the
Yep.
sun. Yeah, and then the flux capacitor, the Y-shaped sigil, is again, I think, the rising beast. And I've always said that I think the beast without a leash is pretty much just like electricity on its own.
Right. That's an interesting way to look at that. I guess it looks like the etymology of DeLorean is related to these hills, right? Hillside, it says. It's a good comment.
Well, think of what you just said, Nick. Electricity on its own. That's exactly what the lightning was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it didn't need the plutonium. It was on its own.
Yeah,
That's
and
perfect.
they say that supposedly that amount of energy does equal an electric bolt. I don't know if that's true or not. Yeah.
Wow.
And even another thing, the Masonic, the 8th letter is H. And you do see that a lot, like with the number 88. That would be like HH again, and not even going so much with Heil Hitler, but I would even say that would be like maybe the double pillars and like the pines again, the twin pines, like just showing like double stuff, and even the twin towers. I even thought that might have somehow fit in there. Oh, that's a little off. Just happened to be in my face. Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense, Nick, because you're doubling the blessings from Mercury, from Hod to Hesed. That's exactly what you're doing. You're throwing the lightning at the ocean. It's doubling, double eight, right? But it's really a reflection. So you're going to transmute the water, like you were saying about alchemy, because the film is extremely alchemical. Like everything in the film, even flux. Flux can be alchemically linked to Hod or Hokmah. Is it before it's used or after it's used? Because actually you can reconstitute flux. So that's another really interesting thing. I also nested an image of that, of the deity with the serpent, which reminds me of that image that Nick makes, like the Y, because he also makes that. And then you can also explain it with like the serpent crown behind him. It's like kind of exploding into view. And his body is blue. So it's kind of stainless, kind of adamantine, you could say. It's interesting. I think that you could make a case that like their god is really space, however you want to conceptualize that.
What if it's like the father and son too? Like what if it's representing the two that become one because the kid goes home?
That's why I think I have that Marty has the yellow and the yellow. At some points, in my opinion, if you look at Marty in the street and look at a red car, it is an orange kind of looking vest, not really red. The orange and Hode, and then the blue clothes shows the prince and the king at the same time.
Well, and sex, power too with orange, right? Passion, sexual,
potency.
yeah. To keep it, I think so.
Yeah. So why do y'all think they? I mean, aside from these are all great details, why do you think they chose this car? I mean, they said it was kind of because it's futuristic looking. I guess I can buy that to a certain extent, but
I would say it's futuristic looking, especially with the doors opening like that.
sure.
But
No,
I
I
mean,
definitely looked futuristic, but why couldn't they just, church up another car? They only, what I'm getting at is this was a very unique automobile. Not only that, was John DeLorean was not like, they chose this car after a time where he just got acquitted of those cocaine trafficking charges, right? This is 1984. He just gets acquitted. So he, right when the movie's just about, so that means they wrote the film while he's on trial for cocaine trafficking charges. The car that he made. Of just very
JJ, you cut out.
oh shoot. Yes. So I was saying it's very bizarre circumstances. John DeLorean's on trial while they're writing this film and getting ready to start filming it. He's on trial for cocaine trafficking charges that he's on trumped up charges by the FBI and the DEA. So they set him up for these things on a sting operation. He gets acquitted, but he gets acquitted just shortly before they start filming. But meaning they used a vehicle of a dude who's on trial for cocaine trafficking charges in a vehicle he only made 9,000 of, which had already ceased production. So it seemed like an odd vehicle choice to me.
Well, also, you know what the last name DeLorean means?
hillside apparently, which is wild to me.
From the hills. Yeah, from the
Yeah.
hills.
Hill Valley.
In Hill Valley.
Yeah,
That's why
wild.
I put that in my notes, but I mean,
I just saw that in the chat a moment ago, but no, that's great stuff, Julia.
JJ, real quick before you move on.
Yeah.
I thought of the mirroring with the DeLorean. Got like the first my notes, which really made me start to think. Besides Marty McFly with the obviously for the Masons, he wakes up at 7:53, and back I started thinking mirroring, and I really wish I would have done this with more stuff. I didn't really get a chance to run everything backwards.
Yeah.
But 357 is a Masonic rite in a ritual that William Preston and Thomas Smith Webb do use in like their areas, and that kind of starts getting into the Scottish rite type stuff.
And to Julia's point, or who made the point about the hill? Julia? Was that
I
you?
did.
Julia.
And where do they build the altars to their fallen angels at the high point?
I mean, I think they chose it for a reason. I mean, the doors do look futuristic, don't get me wrong.
That's what I'm saying, but like that is an easy cop out there, right? There's more to it. Much like the film, there's more of an esoteric or occult understanding of why they chose this. Well, the PR nature alone, the dude's on trial for cocaine. What if he gets found guilty? They're going to have his car in a big budget film? I don't think so.
Yeah, but was he found guilty?
No, but that's what I'm saying. They wrote the film while he was on trial. And
okay, but what if they knew he wasn't?
Well, they started filming it weeks, like we'll call it 10 weeks after the trial ended.
Okay, well, what if they knew he wasn't going to get convicted of anything?
Yeah, but how would you know that? I mean, you know what I mean?
What if he was running? What if he was running because they let him off, just like they did with like literally a bunch of serial killers? But
that's a good point. But they were really after this guy. I don't know who he pissed off, but the feds literally set him up. They brought him the deal, and then they videotaped him doing the deal, and that's why he got off. But then a couple years later, they busted him for tax evasion. So they were really after old JD here, John DeLorean.
Maybe he pissed them off in some kind of way, because like if you were to try to buy a DeLorean now, you can't.
Actually, was at a car auction, Julia,
strangely enough, Julia, he made a very fine automobile apparently, because out of the 9,000 or so that's produced, about 60% are still on the road.
Well, what I'm saying though is, unless you're a millionaire, you're not probably going to be able to just afford this to ride around in.
No, I know. That's a great point. I wasn't saying you're wrong. Yeah, it's a great point, because there's only 9,000 that were ever produced, and only about 6,000 I believe exists today. But yeah, you're right. You're paying money because of the lack of a supply and demand, right? So.
Well, you're paying money because everybody loves Back to the Future.
That's damn right.
You know what I mean?
That's damn right. True. Everyone wants a DeLorean. They want to pimp it out, pimp my ride style.
Yeah, they want to put the LED freaking light strips on it. Yep.
What if the DeLorean guy was a member of their lodge? I'm just thinking totally hypothetically, okay? And so, or he was like a member of their faction. You could say, like, I know JJ likes that word. So,
yeah, well, you're reading my mind there, Jen. Don't be using your wizard skills over here, buddy. You're reading my mind now.
So, well, thank you, JJ. So yeah, he's a member of their faction. It doesn't matter if he gets convicted or not convicted, because they're gonna like give their little wink and their nod to him. It's also interesting that like DeLorean Motor Company, DMC, Delet Mem Cough. I don't know. There's something kind of interesting about that, because if you write it out in Hebrew, it looks like 707. I'm just saying. There is an additional way to do the gematria. I'm not saying that's the proper way. I'm just like, just riffing.
That's good stuff. And to this comment here, that's a great comment. The car turned out to suck, but it's a collector's item. No, apparently mechanically it did not function well, but what I was getting at was the durability and long-lasting nature of the body style and everything, the way they did it. Kind of reminds me, I think Elon Musk copied it for a Cybertruck, right? It's like that same kind of steel or whatever, or that same kind of production of the body style.
They think they're plus ultra, dude. They think like they're
we're talking about factions and cults, right?
Yeah.
Talking about factions and cults, right? There you go, right? I mean, that sounds like a nice connection right there with just having the same aesthetic to these automobiles they're designing.
Yep. They think they're the GAOTU, right? Like we talked about last night.
For sure. So just a quick rundown on old DeLorean here. He gets charged October 19th of 1982. 59 pounds of coke. That's a lot. That's a lot. He wanted to sell 220 of them though, so he was even into more of that. So a lot again, the feds brought it to him and the feds busted him. He was pissing off Detroit by making this vehicles, I think is what it really boiled down to in one aspect at least. You know, he was a former Detroit guy. He's like, I'm gonna make my own car. And they're like, the hell you are, buddy. So he gets acquitted on that on, let's see here, some September 21st, 1985. So this movie comes out, I guess, really what starts filming, I guess, in December, I believe. So about 3 months later. So, you know, I think that's very interesting. And again, or I'm sorry, that's when he got charged with the fraud stuff. He gets acquitted on August 16th. That's right, because the movie came out July 3rd, 1985. That makes sense. So he gets acquitted on August 16th, 1984. And then he's charged again in September of 85. So they were after DeLorean, right? You know what I mean? Like whatever this dude did, there were some lawfare, if you will, being executed against him. But what I find
he was acquitted of all charges.
Well, yeah, they had it on videotape, and there was so much evidence that it was all entrapment, and he had some good attorneys. But but did he win? Because then they came after him, right? And then they're like, "Yo, we got you for fraud." Like months after, a year or so after he gets acquitted, right? So, does he really?
No, it said he was acquitted even after September 1985.
No, that's a great point. But that's what I'm getting at. So, do you really win? Because he's spending all this money on attorneys. So by 2000, he's financially bankrupt, and he's got to sell his mansion.
But it's all in who you know, right?
Right. But what I'm getting at is someone was after bankrupting DeLorean. He sells his mansion in 2000 as a result of this bankruptcy. Right. We're going to get into the Biff Tannen here. That's where I'm heading here. So
the date he got acquitted was magic. I just want to say that
7/21.
The August 16th, 1984. 1984 is 22.
Yep.
Super magic number, right?
How about September 21st, 1985?
August is also the 8, right? Did you say that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 8 and 16. You got 2 8s, right?
Yeah, 888. Yeah, triple 8s.
Yeah. How about September 21st, 1985?
I don't know if Chin.
Do we any commentary on that?
I'm listening. I was just doing my math. Yeah, well, 93, right? Right away.
Oh. Yeah.
And what did you say? 1985?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you'd have you'd be like a perfect 5, right? It would be like the completion of like something that you've done, maybe to do some greater thing, because you always want to try and go up to 7. That's the idea. So you use like maybe a launching pad. That'd be a good date for like a new venture, you could say.
Yep. So that former estate there you see now is the clubhouse of the Trump National Bedminster Golf Course, and the prime residency, Trump calls it his summer White House. Prime residency that he established there in his first term between May and September. That's where he normally lives during those months. But I'm saying that's what he called the summer White House there. And that house right there used to be John DeLorean's. So after getting bankrupted,
kidding.
Now I can't make this shit up. This is where all those damn UFO sightings in New Jersey. I mean to holler there. This is where I'm getting a little too wild there. This is where all those UFO sightings in New Jersey were over DeLorean's property, which is now Trump's property.
Are you serious?
Right over it. Not all of them, but there was
UFO sightings.
Well, those weird drone sightings. There was a high concentration of them in New Jersey that were going over Bedminster, the former property of DeLorean, the current property of Trump.
Wow.
Angels, like Heidi always said.
Weird.
So
it makes sense for the numbers too.
What's that, Jane? It makes sense of the what? The numbers?
Summoning like Heidi always says, like they're playing with angels. That's exactly what it is. And that or they're playing with going away like an angel, like how the movie describes. It's like the same. Yep. It's like two different ideas. Like, do you believe in the other power or do you believe in the self power? Exactly like what Heidi said. I'm just using a different way to describe it. So it's exactly, do you believe in the angels or do you believe in yourself? There's two different schools of thinking, two different factions. So that's an interesting idea, because it's like the Trump connection is really interesting. Just all of this is just it's so fascinating. Like the whole film is like very much deeper than its outer presentation. And maybe that's also like a credit to its success because it it's not like, sometimes magical works, they work and sometimes they don't. That's kind of the idea. Sometimes they are successful and bear fruit and sometimes they don't. But like this film sort of bears endless fruit in a way, very double-edged
You ain't kidding.
because that's right, because it kind of like it keeps Michael J. Fox perpetually famous, even though he retired like 20 years ago. He'll be famous long after he's like an old man because of this film.
Yeah,
Big
it's
time.
definitely not because of Teen Wolf. I'm telling you that right now.
Let's be
Back to the
honest,
Future
that's a
is
fine film as
infamous.
well, though.
I do like it.
that one
I'm
better,
just saying Back to the Future is like
Oh,
what
Yeah.
sailed him off into infamy.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it doesn't compare between the two. Yeah, it doesn't compare. But it's still a fine film, though.
Yeah,
I do
it
find
is.
the FBI informant on the DeLorean case thing. His last name was Hoffman, which made me giggle. Just
Oh
saying.
well, I've dug into that dude's past. He was doing some Iran Contra smuggling for the feds and the DA back in the mid '70s. So that's how he became an informant. So I got a lot to unpack with that because I got some cocaine Bob connections involved in that mix. But
Oh
it's
boy.
a topic for a different day.
Yeah, for sure.
Topic for a different day. The
Well, cocaine, like you always say, JJ, cocaine seems to drive a lot of these kinds of projects. And cocaine
You ain't
is a
kidding.
very mercurial substance. Like if you were to map it out in Kabbalah, would be a very hode substance because it requires fire from the overlap.
Sorry.
No, don't be.
Yeah,
don't
you
be
ain't
sorry.
kidding. I mean, that's for sure. So, if we can transition here on to Biff Tannen, who is based on Donald Trump as the man who is owning the owner now of the old DeLorean estate, the 535-acre estate, formerly known as the DeLorean estate. Again, it's a fantastic place, the summer White House where Trump, in fact, moments after he left Pennsylvania there on July, was it 14th, 2024, when he got the assassination attempt in Butler, PA, he went directly to his Bedminster property. Just saying. He likes that place.
Maybe
So,
the fallen angels healed his ear.
there you go. Maybe the drone UFO aliens got him. Maybe they helped him out. Them and JFK Jr.
Yeah, there was somebody who showed that those things like flew out like right near like a Boeing plane.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's some weird stuff. I mean, it was all hot news, and then now it's not, and then no one really explained it. And it was China, it was Iran, it was nothing, it was ours. I mean, I think it's all part of a distraction from what it really was, right? Which we don't really know. And it did not again. It was over different parts of New Jersey, but there was a pocket where the concentration was for weeks. Donald Trump did a press conference about it during the election and during his campaign. Like, someone really needs to check this out. I've had these drones over my property for 2 weeks. This seems to be a national security issue or something, he says. So very, very wild stuff, if you ask me. So Biff Tannen, based on Donald Trump there, what are your all thoughts on him as a character?
Well, he's just a dick.
He's just a dick. That's true. That's true.
And he's not, and he's like the proverbial, he's like not even a smart dick. He's just a retarded dick.
And he's
kind of like a tree and get out of here.
Right. And he's that's right. And he's kind of like, he's like quantum entangled with Marty McFly's, family tree, right?
They have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's just like what Heidi and Nick said. They have to play each other's like opposing role. But they're
because every time he goes back or forward in time, he's got a new Biff and he's got a new Biff to handle.
Kind of reminds me of The Butterfly Effect. That's another movie I really love. And what'd you say, Nick?
So that's bugged out. That movie.
Oh yeah, no, dude, that could be another episode in itself. But it's like every time Marty goes back or forward, he gets a new Biff, and it's like he's still just as awful as ever, but just in different ways. He butterfly affects him throughout.
Right.
It's like he's still a dick, It's just different variations of what kind of dick he is like throughout.
And it's not even just to McFly, it's to his like parents, right? He's got a whole thing with his mom
Right,
going on, right?
right.
He's got an antagonist thing with George McFly. So he's just the dude who's always there, beefing.
I will say though, in the second movie, the old man Biff is a lot more intelligent than this one that we got pulled up, because he's like, he wants to rig the sports and stuff like that, so he becomes the billionaire.
And of course, there's the Masonic nature of Hiram Biff, right? Like Heidi was saying before.
Well, isn't there something about like Trump's family being connected with Tesla, and they were working on some kind of time travel thing?
Yeah,
and then like
Heidi loves that subject too.
I love that. Yeah. So that's to go with. So Tesla, Uncle John was his understudy, and then you get to Vannevar Bush, and this goes into a whole like I'll be short because I've talked way too much tonight. But yes, he possibly got Tesla's papers. However, there's an argument whether he ever wrote a paper because he memorized everything. So it's a little shady there, but that's basically. And they tossed Mar-a-Lago and they were looking for something. So I'm just saying.
Right.
I don't know.
I had only heard about it like on a very surface level, that there was something about Trump and Tesla. And then if that's true, and this character is based off of like his archetype, the Trump archetype, it would make a lot of sense, especially like in the second movie with like the Biff Tower or whatever, and
for sure
all the weirdness with that.
No, it's definitely true. It was not unclassified for 4 years, but it was John G. Trump was the top physicist at MIT. He was the longest serving professor, and you'll see plenty of interviews where Trump talks about his relationship with his uncle.
Oh, he flexes on that hardcore. He's like, my Uncle John, whenever he wants to push something and F with everybody, he's like, my Uncle John and his papers.
He knows what buttons to push. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's hilarious.
I hate to say it, but I give him an A+. A+ for disgraced nuclear physicist. He's the best you've ever seen. And
do we no, that's a good Trump impression. But I just wanted to ask if y'all any more commentary here on Biff though before we get too long in the matters here.
Yeah, I do. Fuck Biff. I hate his character.
You want him to make like a tree and get out of here?
Yeah, I want Biff to make like a tree and get out of here
and leave. Well, I did think it was funny that they covered him in shit, and I do think that the whole darkness. I could have gone into a whole thing, but I talked a lot tonight, so.
No, that's good, Heidi. Yeah. The shit thing is honest, legit interesting from a metaphysical perspective, because it's kind of like, it was like public humiliation almost. I'm not saying humiliation ritual, Nick. I'm saying it was like a public humiliation. Like it was like he's tarred and feathered. He is the chicken. He has to start again. And Biff is never like, there's nothing redeemable about him in any of the films, in any moment. Like he's not funny. He's not charming. He's not like the Trump that we see, right? Like the outer.
He's a rapist.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's an attempted like assaulter.
And he's gigantic, like back at like possible fallen angel stuff, but like, yeah.
Well, there's a very plus ultra, right? Like that plus ultra thing. They believe that Tesla was like the one magician to follow. He was like there. I'm sorry, Heidi, I forgot the guy.
One ring to rule them all. Is that what you're telling me here, Jen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, and they're going in different directions, different factions. They follow different leaders. Well, one follows Crowley, one follows, there's the wait. I don't know.
Well, and he has always the people behind him, backing him. Like, Trump has had the mob and Cohn and, lots of people that helped him get where he is. I mean, he came up from the depths of shit is what I'm trying,
Well, I'm glad you pointed out the rape part too with this character. He's kind of rapey, old Biff, and there is that element to it, right? With this character, but there's an underlying kind of rapey element to the whole film, if you ask me. And that was one of the apparent contentions, as we mentioned earlier, with Crispin Glover not returning to the film there in number 2 and suing them when they use his likeness, and he's got a big beef about all those things. but that really does kind of there is kind of that esoteric understanding to this whole situation. Based if his statements are true, which I'll do a quick recap on that here if we're done with the character of Biff. So on Crazy Days and Nights, which, you know, take it for what you will, this guy's got he's got a long record of being right on a lot of things before it's public, this entertainment lawyer fellow. But back in 2018, August 17th, 2018, he's discussing why the Crispin Glover and the actress who played Jennifer there did not return to the film. This actor, who has never probably eclipsed B+ list, was portrayed as a troublemaker for spreading the truth. He was effectively blacklisted by any and all people who were friends with the producers. Again, Lucas, Spielberg, Zemeckis. I mean, that's most of Hollywood, and the entertainment lawyer says that's 75%. That sounds about right. There was a group though that were not friends with those producers. They have kept the actor at least earning enough to make a living, and that's accurate. He played some bit roles and smaller roles and things, including the antagonist or the villain in Charlie's Angels being one of the bigger ones that he was offered, you know, many years after, you know, Back to the Future. And I would say he's a pretty good actor. I tend to like.
I love him.
Yeah.
I love him. I think he's so funny.
Kind of noted me out when he starred in the Smiley Face Killer film by Bret Easton Ellis, who wrote American Psycho, but that's a different story altogether. So it says the entertainment lawyer goes on to say, I can't even watch the film any longer because of what I know what was happening on the set. The actor said the multiple bedrooms used in scenes in the film, so the scenes from the film would often smell of cigars and booze, because that is often where the producers would take the boys after their tour of the set, in their Jen, wait for it, quote unquote tour of the set. Our actor also says that every other actor on that film set knew what was going on, but they valued their careers more than the horrors taking place. So that's why apparently those two decided not to leave. Again, this was made by we were mentioning the Steven Spielberg. It's Amblin Entertainment, so he was in charge of this operation along with Zemeckis, and Lucas wasn't necessarily involved, but he's part of their same mix with these guys. So I don't know where he was necessarily, but I'm just saying, they socially speaking, they were probably hanging out still, even while the film was going, right? But you know, it's a very, very odd environment. We see Crispin Glover. I got a quick clip to show you kind of how he feels about this stuff today.
I did not do anything illegal. Bob Gale did something illegal.
We didn't do anything that was illegal.
In the ever-twisting corridors of Hollywood history, one of Tinseltown's most intriguing tales is the legal drama surrounding Crispin Glover and Back to the Future Part 2.
Great Scott. So obviously he's talking about using his likeness, where he famously sued them and was successful in that effort, and that was kind of a landmark issue. But with the anger and vitriol you see in Crispin Glover in an interview from recent years, I think it's rooted more in that letter you were talking about earlier, Julia, which is I will include in the show notes, but I had to go back to locate it. I had to go back to the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, I mean it's buried, and he talks about Steven Spielberg
He goes pretty tough on Spielberg here, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He does.
If you ever saw the picture of Steven Spielberg with the little poltergeist girl on his lap, you will have no questions.
Right.
And she died.
He's got a lot of some real
like
screws.
a bowel obstruction.
Yeah.
That's what they said. That's what they said.
It would make sense if there was traumatic injury there where she couldn't.
Yeah, but they said that she had like a congested colon, and that she got backed up, and that's what. But it's like, come on now, who's believing that?
I agree, and Steven Spielberg has so many dark tales. I was going to say maybe we'll have to discuss that one, collectively here in the future, because I think we all have some great input. It sounds like on that subject.
Well,
when I think of Spielberg,
Barrymore.
Well, hold on. When I think of Drew Barrymore, this is also my same reaction.
Great Scott!
Drew Barrymore was doing coke and drinking at Studio 54 at the age of 9. I mean, yeah, I don't know if Spielberg was there, but some of the other characters in this story may have been like old Donald Trump, right?
Yeah, some gross person was there for sure.
Well, Donald Trump. This is at the era of when Roy Cohn's basically running Studio 54 because the owners are so in debt to him for legal services. to stay out of jail and keep the place open, that he's kind of running that spot by that point.
Oh yeah.
The only reason I bring her up is because of Firestarter and E.T., both Steven Spielberg.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They got her
Very
greased up
MK.
to 78 back there at Studio 54 on some coke and some benzos and some alcohol and whatnot. By the time she met Spielberg, he's like, "Yep, jackpot."
Sad.
For sure.
I do
That
have
film,
a
Julia, was really good, by the way. The clip that you
Wait-
played and you narrating
Oh,
it,
the clip.
it made a lot of
Thank you.
sense.
I enjoyed
It was
your
worth the time.
narration.
I think it was
as well.
better without the sound. I think
was-
that
I
was
enjoy-
I think Julia narrating it was actually the.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It was
I
good.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
If I make let me make one more note on all, well, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I had just a funny pop culture reference to Back to the Future you guys might remember.
Let's do it.
Have you guys watched Knocked Up? It's got like Seth Rogen and what's her face in it where she gets pregnant and whatever. Paul Rudd is in it. And they go to like this dinner or whatever, and Paul Rudd is like, you know, if Doc Brown screeched up in the DeLorean right now, would you go back and put a condom on Ben's dick? And they act like Katherine Heigl and the other chick don't know what Back to the Future is. They were like, we
Right.
don't know who Doc Brown is. And I was
Judd
like,
Apatow's
who the
wife.
fuck? Yeah, I was like, who the fuck wouldn't know what Back to the Future? Like, I'm not believing that for a fucking
No,
second
well,
that
that's
they
a
didn't
good-
know what Back to the Future was.
But that's a good example of how culturally impactful this has been, right? This film has been.
Yeah, for sure. I just mentioned that because I watched that movie the other day, and then you asked me to do this, and I was like, dude, everybody loves Back to the Future.
Right. That, well, I mean, I don't know if Crispin Glover does, but I do love the film, so I know what
Yeah,
you mean.
besides
I know what
him,
you mean. I know
besides
what you mean. So on this nature though of this Crispin Glover and Spielberg situations and the parent kid diddling situations, there's in the rapist, rapey qualities of old Biff Tannen. There's a nature of, again, still underlying in this film that continues to perpetrate these same ideas, if you ask me, and I'll play this clip to demonstrate that point.
Chuck, it's Marvin. Your cousin, Marvin Barry. You know that new sound you looking for? Well, listen to this.
So that cousin obviously being Chuck Berry, the song that old Johnny Be Good that Michael J. Fox was playing, right? So in a Forrest Gump effect, in another Zemeckis style there, he invents the song Johnny Be Good.
Yeah, Chuck Berry, infamous for the Taco Bell farts.
Well, that's only later in his life, man. He has a lot of accolades in this nature previous to that, if you will.
I'll never forget that. I after you told me that, I can't even drive past a Taco Bell without playing Johnny Be Good.
There you go.
That's what's up. That's
I
what's
mean,
up,
Taco
Julia.
Bell farts.
So Chuck Berry was convicted under the Mann Act in 1959 for transporting a 14-year-old girl across state lines for the purposes of prostitution or sexual exploitation. The record company is the one who got him out of prison, so, which is kind of funny. So he's a convicted sex offender, and then in 1972 he records this song, tours nationally on a #1 hit on the billboards, "My Dangling." That's kind of weird. So then
Dangling.
So then in 1992 he gets raided for all sorts of drugs in St. Louis, which becomes in another incident later, as Julia, you just pointed out. And in this incident, they raid his home there in St. Louis, and they raid a bunch of videotapes that later get leaked to tabloids of him farting in hookers' mouths. Apparently that was his favorite thing to do: hire a hooker and then fart in her mouth. So he would later be arrested for or pay off a lot of women in civil lawsuits. I don't know if they think they dropped the criminal charges for installing video cameras in the toilets of women's bathrooms of the Taco Bells and KFCs that he owned. About, a couple dozen, I believe. So Chuck Berry he hadn't got, he'd been, he was
fuck.
He's a sick fuck, but he was convicted of the Mann Act stuff by that point, and then weird that he did the whole dangling thing. But that it was after the Back to the Future stuff they got him for the farting in the hooker's mouth, which is obviously not the charge, but it's still ridiculous. And then then of course the camera stuff I think was more like 1998 or 99. Nonetheless,
you want a
career long sick
full
bastard.
circle? You want a full
Please
circle
do.
moment?
Please do.
You remember I said nobody gets out of this place without farting in my mouth?
Yep.
Adventures in Babysitting. So
Yep.
Adventures in
You ain't leaving the stage
Babysitting,
unless you play the blues.
right? But Adventures in Babysitting and Back to the Future 2, Elizabeth Shue.
Oh shit, you're right. Yep. You are correct, ma'am. That's a good
Full
point.
circle moment.
That is full circle. And if I may close this, if anyone else has any other commentary here, but we'll do some closing statements. But I want to kind of go full circle here myself here with going back to the future on some Operation GCD shows relative to these topics here, relative to the character Biff Tannen, Donald Trump, who was, based on Biff Tannen, kind of the predictive programming natures of that stuff, and the fact that he's connected to the DeLorean property. I find it all very fascinating. So we'll do some closing stuff here after this clip. If I just want to go back to the future here on this one and go full circle, as you were just saying there, Julia. So that's some interesting aspects.
Right,
Deanne does
right.
use the casino money and shakes up the Republican Party. And the movie did almost get right the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, right? They were off
They
by a
got
year.
that right?
Well, they were off by a year. They won in 2016.
Close
They won in
enough.
2016. So, that's what I'm saying. It's creepy enough, right? And that whole incident of the Cubs winning the World Series, that incident's real creepy to me. So it was called the Curse of the Goat. This Curse of the Goat was like one of the most infamous curses in any major sports, right? Haunting the Cubs for nearly 100 years. Well, the folks that are credited for breaking the Curse of the Goat is the Revisa Sports Hypnosis and Sports Psychotherapist family business, as in Buffalo Jared.
Yeah.
That man, my former stalker, his dad and uncle, he was actually part of the family business too, were the folks who broke the Curse of the Goat. The Chicago Cubs officially recognized Ken Revisa as the person who broke the Curse of the Goat. So
Wow.
that aspect of the Back to the Future series, it's a little close to home.
What if the Cub thing was a year and a day? Like it was like a HGA ritual, like it was like intentionally off by a year. It was
Okay.
I don't know. That would be a funny little game that magicians.
No, I enjoy your
kind of
perspective
play.
on these things because it's not it's fairly unique from the way I look at things. So I like what you're saying. So
Awesome.
I appreciate y'all joining me here tonight to get a little GCD and discuss this occult and esoteric review of the 1985 cinematic masterpiece, Back to the Future. And I appreciate the folks of the interwebs staying with us. We folks seem to be enjoying the conversation. I know I am. So I'd like to go around a round table here and give everyone, any closing statements, any plugs you want to do. By all means, take your time. Not trying to rush anybody, but we'll start off with Heidi since you're down there in the bottom right. Let's start down there.
Well, thank you so much for putting up with me tonight, you guys. I nerded out.
good.
I'm so sorry.
Good.
Me too.
Yeah, it was fun. I love the show. I love the second one almost as much. So it was just
we
a
might
great
have to do a
time, like
sequel to this
always.
series, right?
Yes, always a great time with the Occult Rejects. So,
Yeah.
and anytime I can come on and be on a show with JJ is amazing. So thank you guys.
Right back at you, ma'am.
Thank you. Find me anywhere podcasts are served, unfilteredrisepodcast.com. Also know if you watch me on YouTube, it's only once a week drop versus twice or more on Spotify, just because they ding me. So much love to all of you. Thank you for watching.
Julia, appreciate you joining us, ma'am, as always. Since I forgot about you joining us in Golden Child, I'm glad you could make it back round two. We'll have to do a non-occult and esoteric review and talk some other parapolitics, as we often cross over in a lot of our ideas and subjects we enjoy, not the least of which Tuesday Weld.
Hey, you know what would be a nice follow-up to Tuesday Weld? We could really throw down on JFK Jr. because that's another one of my faves that I'm
You
very
ain't kidding.
interested in.
once again, like I said, a lot of crossover. You may have well just read my mind because Heidi and I were on the Sixth Sensory podcast last night, and I came to the revelation when we were talking Society of Cincinnati that JFK Jr. was likely a dual member of the Society of Cincinnati, one the French chapter and one the Maryland chapter, and that's a longer tale, but it's interesting aspect.
No, yeah, I'd love to pick your guys' brain on him because that's another topic I could just talk about forever. But thanks so much for having me on this one. I love Back to the Future. I love the third one. You can skip me on the esoteric review of the second one because I think it sucks dicks. But the first one and the third one, I'm down.
You think it's garbage,
all day. Yeah, I don't like it. And you know, it's funny to think where they thought we would be in 2015, and we're still just lame weirdos. No flying cars, no hoverboards, no self-tying shoes. I mean, I don't like the second one, but thanks so much for having me. This was really fun. Jen, Nick, Heidi, JJ, you're all awesome. I love working with you. I think we covered a lot of ground on this one.
We killed it. For sure. Jen, greetings, sir. How about you share some more wizard skills with us this evening? I appreciate your time as always in your reviews. JJ. Oh, I'm convinced of it, man. You're always dropping some wizardry on me.
You know, I love to play the Hermesticus when we do lives. It's my like Nick already knows. Heidi also knows just because she's like intuitive like that. But Nick actually knows because I've said it to him. It's my favorite thing to play Plus Ultra on live. So there you go. I'm admitting it. No, I want to thank you guys. Obviously, thank you, JJ, so much for inviting me, including me on these.
Yes, sir.
I know that we get a lot of cool people liking my posts about this. So it's like it's interesting for me to like see these people who I think are like cooler than me, and they're kind of into it. So that's great. And thank you, obviously, boss. Thank you, Nick, so much. Thank you, Heidi, so much. Thank you, Julia, so much. And just want to say thank you. I wanted to keep it light tonight, but the Carlwood interview was like a really cathartic moment for me. And I just want to dedicate this one to my co-host for the Twyman series, Zach Schumar, and of course, Zach, Third Eye Homunculi, who passed away. So thank you guys so much. It meant like a great deal to me. So it's like a really beautiful way to close that chapter.
Time is always.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Nick, as always, I appreciate your time as always, sir, and look forward to our Friday conversation coming up. And as always, with our co-hosts on Fridays together.
Yes.
Yeah, Austin Wade Picard. But what else? What else are your thoughts on closing statements tonight, and anything else you want to plug?
Well, I think. Well, first off, thankfully. After posting, it was going to be the most comprehensive covering of Back to the Future. That's what exactly happened. So thank you, everybody. I think that was amazing. It was 3 hours long. There was a lot of stuff in there.
Comprehensive.
Yes, yeah. It was that was called research. So, and just one thing I just want to add. I do think, and I think we've all kind of said it. Somebody said it earlier. It might have been Julia. Or maybe it was Heidi. I do think if you look at everything that we talked about, in my opinion, all that stuff is in that movie on purpose. It's all been added to the scene. It's all there for a reason. I think the way we all looked at it and pretty much came to the same stuff, I think you can kind of see that it's choreographed. That doesn't happen by accident. I don't think.
I mean, there it is, JJ. You finally found it for me.
To that point you were making, Nick, and to Julia's comment earlier, there you go. The opening scene, and there's Doc Brown hanging from a clock tower in the background of that opening scene.
Everything is on purpose, dude. Every little thing is on purpose.
Even me bringing this up right now is on purpose. I was waiting for this moment.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
Well, look
I
at
love
what
it.
it says on the clock. It says Axis.
Oh, yeah.
That's a rune, too. The kid hanging from it. I think it's Thorn, actually. I don't really know the runes. I hate the Norse stuff. I'm the first.
I can zoom in more if you need.
Let me look it up really quick, JJ.
Julie, he's even got the same hat on. He's got that hat on.
That's what I'm telling you, dude. It's Doc Brown.
Yeah, for sure, dude. That's crazy.
The shadow doesn't match, and it's very phallic looking. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, by all means, please provide input. I mean, this is what we're talking about here, right? We're closing it out here with exactly this is the great closing.
Looks like the Amazon sign almost, right? At the
Yeah, dude. Or like if you look at it maybe from the side, it kind of looks like the whole compass thing. I don't know.
Right.
Well, why is there a 3D
yeah.
aspect to a 2D object here, right?
Exactly.
Well, I think it might be. I think it might be 3D though. I think like
Is
the
it?
guy
I thought it was painted
hanging
on.
is-
Okay.
No, I
I
don't
was gonna
think
say,
it's
is this
painted
more of that
on.
duality?
It's very magic
maybe it
numbers.
is.
You see the
It's the
shadow
whole
and whatnot?
thing.
I mean, I see the shadow. I thought it was because it was like as the clock hand moves, the little
hear ya.
guy moves with it. You know.
You may be right. You may be right. I was just viewing it as painted on there with that kind of shadow of it as well, like the duality nature of it still.
Yeah, because the
Could be either
trapped
one.
man is he who travels through time. It's not. It's
Uh-oh.
not someone who's right. Like they're out to master
Time travel,
space.
huh?
Right. Like they solve time travel. They solve that paradox. They solve that area between the hill and the valley. That's done. Now the next thing is
Who
to
did- who
travel-
did?
is to conquer space.
Who
You
solved
can say
it?
it's just a metaphor for the whole film. It's like the hermetic journey, the hero's journey.
And again,
You know my response
almost
is to
an
that,
8.
Jen, don't you?
Almost an
What
8.
was that, Heidi?
Again, almost an 8. It's almost like he's trying to hold it back from being an 8 once again.
On here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bottom. Well, it looked like the bottom one would be on an 8 anyway, right?
I was gonna say, I think
Yeah.
the small hand's on the 8.
Yeah, but it's not quite, right? Like
Right.
It's
It's
not
not. It's almost 8 a.m. Right? Yeah. It's 7:54. Right.
so he's holding back time so there can't be a completeness of infinity.
Well, I think all of those clocks in the opening scene are on that same time. Right there's this one. Right? Is that right, Julia?
Yeah, they're all on the same time. Exactly. Remember from the phone call, exactly 25 minutes late.
Right.
Because
Right.
he's like,
exactly.
"Are you
He's like,
telling
I'm
me
late.
it's 8:25?" Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Nice. No, I don't remember where I was going with that before, but I like those points. That's good stuff. Oh, my response to all of this.
Great Scott!
There you go. So no, I appreciate everyone's time, and if I can offer a couple quick plugs, like I said, I got Operation GCD Live Sundays coming up here 8 p.m. Patreon only, with links in the show notes, along with links for all of our wonderful guests here in the Occult Rejects panel here this evening, full blown Occult Rejects panel, and I got this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I got The Curse of Robert the Doll. That's going to be a scary one, more so for me than anyone else. And then the following Sunday, as I just mentioned, the Revisa family and the Curse of the Goat, which is a great tie-in here, because I got the Legends of Buffalo Jared Revisa. This is my former stalker / almost, he wanted me to hire him as my PR guy, and then he pretty sure he wanted to murder me and wear my skin as a coat, because he later went on a multi-state killing spree, and I think I suspect he's some sort of mind-controlled situation. But so that'll be a fun tale. Again, not so much for me, but probably for other people.
For you, just PTSD. It's fine.
Yeah, I was saying, for me, just grudging out some nasty memories, but I try to make some humor out of it. That's how I get by in life.
He wanted to wear you like an Edgar suit.
He was like, he told me to put the lotion on the skin, and I was like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, dude.
What are you talking about, PR? What are you talking about, lotion?
Fatten you up so you could hibernate together.
All right, well, right. Well, strangely enough, the man he murdered, he actually hired him to be his PR rep for his new race that he invented. So again, this is the life and times of that I have to deal with here, and the circumstances and whatnot. But I appreciate all folks on the interwebs tonight and tuning in and chatting, and seem to be fairly well engaged and enjoying the things. I like to see that. I always aim to entertain here, and I believe most of the rest of the panel here does, except for Jen. He just intends to do wizardry around everywhere. So, and for that much, I also appreciate. But I thanks all the Occult Rejects here for joining us. And any final comments from anyone?
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
That's right.
Great Scott.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, well, check your 6. Look in that garbage can, because you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.